And this is the first ever Owen Report Town Hall with Senate Candidate Mark Lynch. This is a very important race because we're trying to get a swamp creature out of Washington, D.C. That swamp creature, of course, known as Lindsey Graham. Now, we're going to be talking about the importance of why we need to get Lindsey Graham out of Washington, D.C. here in a moment. But let's not ignore the big news of the day. President Trump traveling to the Middle East. He was in Egypt and Israel today, signing peace deals and getting hostages released. As of right now, there is peace in the region. We can only pray that it sustains as families are being reunited. And anybody that listens to me and knows my work knows that I've been very critical on these issues. But it's very important for us to remember our humanity today. And even though we may have issues with what's being prioritized in Washington, D.C., even specifically with this administration, today is a good day for humanity. Prisoners were released, hostages were released, and there is peace right now in the region in what is a landmark historic day. And for all the issues that we might have politically, today is a big victory for the United States of America because it's our president that got it done. And it's our president that took the leadership role today. He led this peace negotiation. He led the peace ceremony today. He spoke to the media and he spoke to the world, and he showed what true American leadership looks like. And so despite the issues we might have that led up to this, President Trump was an American hero today. And so we must remember our humanity. Hostages were freed, families were reunited, and for right now, the bombing has stopped. So today is a proud day to be an American, and we can get back to the issues we may have on another day. But today, we celebrate peace, and we celebrate families reunited. Now, having said that, we bring in our guest for the next 3 hours, and that is Senate Candidate Mark Lynch, who's going to be running against Lindsey Graham. And Mark, first I want to introduce you to those that might not know, because Lindsey Graham is a popular name in American politics, not for good reason, by the way, not for good reason. He's a well-known name in the right-wing movement right now, but you are running against him, no doubt running against not only Lindsey Graham, but probably the swamp apparatus. It's a major journey for you. Tell people who you are and why you decided to embark on this journey.
Yes, thank you, Owen. And I'd like to just put a prayer request out there to everybody in the world about the families that have dealt with death of loved ones and that happened when the Gaza invasion first began that didn't come home today. We've got to remember them too. But thank God we have a president that is America first and supports Israel and got these people out. It wouldn't have been something if he'd been the president 2 years ago, right? We would have had a different story a lot sooner. But God bless President Trump and what he's done in that issue, and thank you for bringing that up today. Yeah, I'm Mark Lynch, and I'm running to take out a flimsy flopper traitor, and his name's Lindsey Graham. And how did I get into this? I'm a successful businessman. We have a family business that's in its 73rd year. I formed a buy-sell agreement with my father back in 1983, and I went to this university. I was stomping these grounds in 1976, and we were the freedom generation of 200 years. You know, graduating high school in 76. But it's good to be back here. But I got involved in politics working with our national security consultants, some of the top people in the world back in 2014 that have been fighting the Islamic infiltration and the invasion. They've been walking into our country, working cooperatively with the Marxist communist organizations in the country to take our country over. And we've lived through a coup. We've been at war. They didn't have AK-47s and tanks on the ground, but they've controlled the narrative. They've introduced hate crime bills, red flag laws. They're having, 15 children, and they're winning by sheer voting, and they're taking over certain areas of our country. We noticed that in 2020, when Portland, Oregon, and Michigan and areas in our country were burning to the ground for 4 months all summer, nobody was stopping it. And why? Because it's them. They don't arrest themselves, and we've got certain people in authority that are not doing the job. We're not enforcing the rule of law. And I got involved back then and doing presentations in churches and training our local police and sheriffs and FBI and SLED agents about the Islamic infiltration in America. And people recognized me and asked me to run for office. And I ran for a state Senate seat. I almost won. That was in 2020 when we had COVID lockdowns. We couldn't even door knock after March.
And you kept your business open, by the way.
Oh, yeah. We fought to keep it open. You know, it was interesting that the big globalist, corporations, big chain stores got to stay open, but small businesses were supposed to close. And our abortion clinics got to stay open. And liquor stores got to stay open, but churches had to close. Is anybody paying attention? I had to tell the police to get out of my store. And if you're here to arrest me, please give me that news story. And they wouldn't quit harassing us. And finally, one of my friends on the city police force called and said, Mr. Lynch, your company is the #1 highest level of complaints we get in Greenville County. And I said, Eric, let me tell you something. If we fought a second place, then you come see me in person. But we told OSHA to get out, DHEC, and fought all that because it was all a scamdemic, And but our people, a few of them were afraid. We encouraged them and walked them off the ledge a little bit about COVID, and we didn't wear masks or social distance because it was just all stupid. And
but you didn't have a winter of death?
No.
Like Joe Biden said?
No. We have 110 employees. Our company's grown when I took it over in 1985 from 5 employees to 110, and we didn't have anybody die. We had a few people get sick for a few days, but they got over it. And we promoted ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, and everybody was fine. But yeah, I'm a successful businessman. That's what I do. And, we did some polling a couple of months ago, and South Carolinians have said 57% of them said they would never vote for Lindsey Graham again. 60% of the people polled in South Carolina through a Rasmussen polling that we did said that they prefer a successful businessman over an attorney or a career politician.
I can think of one successful businessman who's had some success recently in the political world.
Yep.
I can think of one for sure.
Sure. He knew how to get the prisoners out, the hostages out of Gaza.
And, it's a very important point, too, because, and you kind of alluded to this, Biden didn't do it. Netanyahu didn't do it. Trump did it. Trump actually got it done. He got it done where others had failed for multiple years. And maybe that is the businessman. Maybe that is the international businessman in him that was able to bring people together to reach a deal where so many times politics gets in the way and you become so rigid in your political stance that you're not able to actually get deals done. And I think that Trump has shown diplomatic solutions can exist when you have a good faith effort. And when, I think most importantly, when the other leaders in the room trust you. And I think that's probably what was lacking, is they didn't trust past leaders, but they trusted Donald Trump, and that's how he was able to get it done. And the people of South Carolina obviously don't trust Lindsey Graham anymore.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't do what he says unless it's a campaign season. We had the Breitbart organization contact our campaign team around March, and they said, we don't know what y'all are doing, but we've never seen Lindsey move to the right this early in a campaign cycle. So we gave them a news article of correspondence, inter email exchange between Paul Harstad, Obama's chief campaign pollster, with John Podesta, who was working closely with Hillary. And they agreed in that email correspondence that Lindsey Graham would be the greatest ally to the Democrat Party they'd ever had. And that's who he is, and it's the Democrat Party's gone. When Obama was the president, they took God out of the party at a convention in Charlotte. They voted to remove God out of their party. Our country was founded on godly principles. We came here to worship the one true God. That's what started this great experiment called America. And it's the only way our country will work with the Constitution, the way our framers wrote it, to have a moralistic, God-fearing America. And look at what Biden did when he had ISIS lead the evacuation out of Afghanistan. We left $85 billion worth of military equipment there. Not too long after that, he sent a check to Iran for $8 billion. That's not America first. I think that's treasonous. we're funding, all of us in the room here that pay our taxes, and we need to talk about that too, to get our taxes stopped. But we're paying for our own destruction in America. And the Democrat Party and the Uniparty, some of the establishment Republicans that are fighting against Trump, they were never Trumpers till he won, and he was the last man standing in the primary to go face the Democrat in the general elections. They loved him then, but they hated him up until that point. And it's just a shame our country's that far gone. We've got to get it back, and Trump's back in office, and he's positive. It's just like he said about these hostages. They're all coming home now that I'm here. We're going to get them out. It's not, can we? Maybe. He doesn't think negatively. I don't either. I don't accept no and stuff like that in business. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And that's the way I look at things too. And I'll do that in the U.S. Senate when I get to that swamp and bring God back first. And that's what makes America great again.
We'll get back into the Lindsey Graham issue here in a second, but you are also a local church leader as well. You are well involved in the church here.
Yeah, my wife and I have done mission work all over the world, in Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Central African Republic, Liberia. We've done evangelism team work in Bogota, Colombia. And I'm an ordained deacon at our church, this Burnsview Baptist Church in Greer, South Carolina.
So to me, this is an obvious decision for South Carolina. Either Lindsey Graham, who's losing all trust and is now basically has swamp creature tattooed on his forehead, versus you, somebody that's been involved in the state community, the local community for decades. You've proven your worth in business. And so it's a pretty obvious choice for South Carolina, but we know you're up against the swamp, as we call it. You're up against the establishment, which now some on the right are finally willing to fight, I think.
Yeah. When we were at CPAC, one of the interviewers said, "What's the biggest difference between you and Lindsey Graham?" I said, "See that lady standing over there? That's my wife of 37 years. And we have 2 children and 4 grandchildren, and they're all saved and they're doing awesome." And I said, "Lindsey knows nothing about that subject, family." It's interesting, right? So character matters. And we're all in this room, in all of our political organizations and activist groups back at home. We're fighting, like in our area, there's a couple of hundred people that are out every night till midnight fighting for the cause to save our country in the fight for America. And that's the theme of our campaign. It's God first, God, family, country. But we got to fight, and we've got to get rid of the bad actors that are in Congress, in our state house, at the county, city level, and school boards, and get good people that are like us, that are true Americans, that love the Lord and love America. This is the greatest place there is because it's God-centered. And, Obama said we're no longer a Christian nation when he got in office. And I hate to tell you, but we are. We're not an Islamic nation under Sharia law, and we're not a communist nation. This isn't Russia. This is the United States of America. And like Donald Trump has said many times, America's back. And we're here to take it back again and get rid of all the bad people that are in this country.
Well, not only have the Democrats decided to abandon God from their party platform, maybe even their personal lives, it seems as though they've completely abandoned common sense. It seems as though they've completely abandoned America, the values, the ideals. At this point, I think most Americans who have lived through, let's say, decades of political decisions, election cycles, many don't even recognize the modern Democrat Party. Certainly not the Democrat Party that you saw years ago when you were coming up in South Carolina. This is a whole different breed.
Right. No, they're the enemies of our country. Today, in my opinion, you're either a patriot, you're an enemy, or you're a traitor. That's the 3 categories of people we have in our country. And, it's a shame, but we've got a lot of work to do, and people are starving for the truth. All the young people are encouraging me, like all the students at the universities here that we're traveling to and speaking. They're concerned about their futures. They're godly students. They want truth again, and they want the opportunity that maybe the baby boomer generation had, like I did after the greatest generation after World War II. They want to know they can go out and afford to buy a home. and have a good life and have peaceful living here in America and enjoy the freedoms that God gave us. That's our unalienable rights that our forefathers made sure they protected in the Constitution, and we got to get back to that.
And when we were talking earlier, you made sure to emphasize shall not be infringed. This was something you really emphasized when we were talking earlier. It seems that there's a lot of infringements happening right now, especially from one Lindsey Graham.
Right. We had an event at our business, and we had the parking lot full with about 800 to 900 people with a Second Amendment shall not be infringed event. And we had T-shirts, and all the gun stores came, and we had people from the State House come and speak at the event, and national security consultants came and spoke. And our forefathers knew they'd left an evil country, and we've got to have a way to protect ourselves from evil government. And one of our sheriffs spoke. He said, we had some guns on display, and they said, none of these guns have jumped up and killed anybody. That's amazing. Because if that's the case, like with, Lindsey Graham promotes and signed on to promote red flag laws to confiscate our guns. And I'm against all of that. And we have Second Amendment rights. Those are our God-given unalienable rights. And we've had people in Columbia in our state house working for constitutional carry, which is a waste of taxpayers' money, in my opinion, because we've had constitutional carry. We've had the right to protect ourselves ever since we were born, and this nation became a nation, and it was ratified in 1791 with our Second Amendment. And anybody trying to get rid of that's crazy. We should outlaw soccer mom vans, because sometimes our enemies drive vans into crowds of people and kill them. Or spoons, because we can have a eating addiction and overeat and kill ourselves in crazy eating habits, right? But people kill people, not guns. And the enemies, the bad people, are always going to have a way to get a gun. If not, they can get an axe or a shovel or a baseball bat or a soccer van and go kill people.
Another issue that we were talking about, and I think that when we look at the red flag laws, we kind of have to look at all of these different things that end up getting used against us, right? And you had mentioned the Patriot Act. And of course, now we're dealing with members of Congress. They're complaining because they're getting spied on. But the American people are being spied on by our government for decades now when they signed the Patriot Act. And you were talking about how, hey, we have to be careful with this stuff. Eventually, it ends up getting used against us. You mentioned January 6th, obviously a big example. But talk about that same phenomenon with red flag laws. That's very easily something that when Democrats, if God forbid Democrats get back into power, they'll say it's a red flag if you vote Republican. They'll say it's a red flag if you're a conservative, and they'll make sure you can't be armed. I don't think Lindsey Graham is thinking about that. I'm not sure he can think that far ahead.
I don't know. Who is he? Why is everything he's doing? Why does he have a 57% voting record lifetime constitutionally?
That's an F, by the way. He's an F on the Liberty score.
Right. A 43% lifetime score on conservative review. But he says he's a conservative candidate. He's not. His record proves it. The red flag laws are where our enemy can set us up, and we can have an angry neighbor, and we can get concerned about that, and we can call our local sheriff or police department and say, hey, I'm worried about this guy or our neighbor across the street that's a liberal Democrat or whatever, and I call them enemies, traitors to the country. They can call the police up, and they'll come by with that phone call and confiscate your firearm from you. And so our enemies is called civilization jihad in the Quran. They'll take their enemies down by their own hands. And that's what we've seen happen. The Patriot Act, we saw our elections stolen in 2020. Everybody's called common sense, like Trump's talking about again. When you go to a Trump rally and there's 30,000 people, and you go to a Biden event and there's 12 people 6 foot apart, social distanced, we all know who really won.
Half of those 12 were bussed in too.
Right.
On a short bus.
Paid to bust in, and given some bricks to help bust up the city before they leave. And we're paying for that too. But anyway, J6 happened. We all went to express our First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, to protest the election with a peaceful protest. And Trump did not lead an insurrection. There's never anything anybody can show us where Trump even hinted at that. He said, go and have a class act and be peaceful and go express your grievances. And they set us up, and it was a sting operation. We saw the videos where they moved the railing out of the way and said, you want to come on in? And then they got everybody's IP addresses off their phones and contacted them. If they admitted they went in, it became a felony charge, up to 20 years of imprisonment. And I met Enrique of the Proud Boys and the head of the Oath Keepers at Ron Paul's 90th birthday celebration. And those guys need retribution, because Biden called all the MAGA supporters terrorists. The Patriot Act was used against them, and we were concerned about that when Bush instilled that act and passed that law, and our country flip-flopped, and we were the enemies of our own country that we all grew up in, because we're singing Amazing Grace and waving a flag at our house, we the people own, in D.C.
And I wish that this was more of a priority right now, and maybe with some of these peace deals closing today, maybe we can get back to that, because I do think it's very important for, as you said, retribution. And that might be a word that people try to shy away from. So we'll call it justice, but it's justice is what it is. And now Trump has came out and he said, and I happen to know because I was involved in the litigation, they used to tell people when they were going through discovery in these cases, and the defendants would request information from the federal government, and they would say, well, how many informants did you have on the ground? And they would play all of these different word games. Oh, well, we didn't have any informants. Well, did you have any plainclothes confidants? Did you have any assets? And they would always try to play these games. And eventually they would land on, well, the federal government had so many assets in the crowd that day that we can't give you a number. There were too many to count, is ultimately what their argument was. And now President Trump is saying, well, we know that they had hundreds of people in the crowd that day. So what were they doing? Were they part of the Antifa instigation? Were they part of some other entrapment like we saw in Michigan? This is a very important thing. And I don't really hear enough chatter about it right now in DC, because that was a political persecution of thousands of Trump supporters and innocent Americans.
Absolutely. It 100% was. Dinesh D'Souza, who put out some great videos, 2,000 Mules. He put out one about Obama, 2016, Hillary, and Obama had him arrested. He went to prison for 2 years. He's pushing out truth and getting persecuted for it. And he put out the documentary Police State. He had whistleblowers that left the FBI and left the Capitol Police and admitted that they were told to do that day. And you can see that video. And we're living in a country that if Trump wasn't back in office, we're all subject to having our doors kicked in at 5:30 in the morning and having SWAT teams coming in like they took all the J6ers to prison. We've met several of them and had events.
Well, the two of them that you mentioned, Enrique Tarrio and Stuart Rhodes, would both still be in prison right now. They would both still be in jail, including a multi-time Purple Heart winner, Joe Biggs. They would still be rotting in a prison right now if not for President Trump.
That's right. So look at that too, what he's done. He's righting these wrongs, atrocities against the citizens of America.
You mentioned something, and it's so hyperbolic, but we hear it all the time now. It's this new policy, this new idea, constitutional carry. I hear it in Texas. You hear it in South Carolina. We hear it everywhere. Constitutional carry. That seems a little redundant. We already have a constitution. We already have a Second Amendment. It seems a bit hyperbolic that we talk about constitutional carry. Isn't that, I mean, to me, that's just a sign of where things are at in Washington, D.C., where things are at in American politics. We've reached such a twilight zone level where we're begging for our constitutional rights. We're having to come up with new names just to recertify the rights that were already given by God. How do you even try to explain that? It's like, where do we go from here as Americans where we've reached, hey, can we please have our rights? We have to beg. Can we please have our constitutional carry? Can we get new laws passed? These laws are already on the books. They're our founding laws.
Right. I mean, when we've allowed our government to control us. And I love what Pastor Matthew Trewhella says in his book, The Doctrines of the Lesser Magistrates, that when our laws don't match God's laws, it's our obligation and our duty for the church and for the people to stand up and resist at whatever level we have to. We cannot be controlled by our own government. Our government's gotten way too big. They've stepped over constitutional boundaries. They've created more powers that they've never had when they had 18 enumerated powers. We've got all these unconstitutional agencies that are operating in the country that we need to shut down. Experts tell us that 80% of our budget would return immediately if we shut those agencies down that are outside of enumerated powers to create those agencies. And so, like red flag laws or constitutional carry, I think the evil people inside of our government, the traitors or enemies of our country, created constitutional carry because they added a lot of additional laws inside of those, even here in our state, that gives them more control and more background searches and invasion of privacy against other amendments in the Constitution. And they gained a little more control under the guise of, we're going to let you have constitutional carry. And so we stepped down in our privacy and in our rights to have arms even further down than we were before they passed it. It's a bad, bad bill.
Well, and aside from just getting wonky about the policy, imagine how disillusioned somebody is that thinks sticking a sign in a doorway is going to stop somebody from going in there with a gun. This is really where the Democrats are at. They really think if they write something down on paper or they stick a sign in a doorway, that's going to stop a madman. It hasn't been proven to stop one. And it just shows this is what we're up against right now. We're up against a party that is just, they're lost in a world that doesn't exist, right, is how I like to say it. Pregnant men, transgender children. The Democrats are lost in a world that doesn't exist right now.
Yeah. Well, it's craziness. It's evil. It's all spiritual warfare. A gun on a door that says no concealed weapons allowed is an advertisement to an evil person that says, this will be easy for you. You can come in here. It's a free kill zone. We all remember that Batman movie that happened. That guy knew that. Movie theaters have the no concealed carry stickers on the front of the doors. And he set up a kill zone in the way he directed his people to come towards the exit, and that's where he was murdering all those people. When I took my concealed carry class, which is crazy, we have to have that, but I did it just to, I want to get along with the police if I get pulled over, and they like me or any of us that have that because there's been a background check. But so I played the game, and my police officer that led that class at our store for some employees said, let me tell you something. I'm a police officer and I'm still active, and I'm telling you this. Take your gun into every bar, every church, every movie theater, everywhere they have those stickers on those doors, because I'd rather be at your trial than at your funeral, because the bad guys are going to carry their guns in there, and nobody has the right to tell you you can't bring a gun into that. We have to be able to move freely and travel and shop and spend money and go to the gas station or go to a movie and have the right to protect ourselves. That's one thing I'll look into in the United States Senate, where we'll abolish those no concealed carry stickers on all these windows. You can't do that. You can't limit my protection areas in my world that I travel in.
See, now you're starting to say the words that I think get people a little excited. Abolish, shut down. We don't hear those words enough in Washington, D.C. Am I right? So do you think there's enough momentum? Because I think it starts with we the people. I really do believe it starts with we the people. The problem is once our representatives get elected, they kind of seem to abandon us, right? They'll talk a big game and then they get in and they kind of abandon the things that they stood for. Do you think there'll ever be a true desire to shrink the size of government? Do you think that there'll ever be a true initiation to abolish these things or even shut down some of these agencies? Do you think that's something, because it's not going to come from the left. I think that that's been proven clear now. It's not going to come from the left. They want to expand it. Do you think the right wing or the Republican Party at large will ever embrace the concept of small government?
The right wing today, Owen, is that the uniparty? I mean, we have 3 or 4 people in the U.S. Senate today that vote the correct way. If I get in, I'll do that. I promise you I won't compromise. I'll hold the line. That's why people have asked me to run again for a seat, because people in our communities that know me as a leader in the community, in the church, and growing a business, they know that I'll hold the line. And so we've got to have true conservative Republicans that will hold the line and not compromise and not take a paycheck and sell out, sell their soul to the devil, and focus on themselves like Lindsey Graham has. He's Lindsey first. I come to serve the people, and I'm your employee. And if I don't do right, I would hope we could get a law. I'm for term limits, but maybe we have a merit qualification too along the way. If I get in and my term is 6 years, do you have to let me stay in for the full 6 years if every other day I'm voting like an enemy of our country, like the Democrat Party does? We've got to be able to hold people accountable. If in my organization, if I employ you and you start failing to honor your job responsibilities and you're on drugs or doing horrible stuff or stealing from the company and lying to us, you don't get to stay for a term limit. You're going now. After third strike, if you can't change your ways, it's time for you to go. And why do we have to put up with that with our people that we employ in government?
Well, and I don't think we've seen it any other way. For my entire life, it seems like that's how it's been. It seems like once they get in, you call it the uniparty, call it the swamp, call it the deep state. It seems like once they get in, that's what always wins. The uniparty, the deep state, the swamp, whatever word we want to use, it seems like they continue to win. The people continue to lose. And the evidence is right in front of us. In fact, the highest approval rating for any department right now is the Department of Homeland Security, which I think just eclipsed 30%. And that's your highest approval rating. It might be look out, it's almost a 40. Whoa, we're on a run here. That shows that the people don't really feel that the government is working for them. Nothing that the government is doing seems to benefit them. The approval ratings show that. And it's just like you feel like something has to give eventually, whether it's Mark Lynch getting in there or a bunch of people that think and act like you do, something is going to have to give. Eventually, the American people are going to say every single department is polling under 30%. Congress, Senate, record low approval ratings. The American people are desperate for a representative, a senator, a House member, anybody, a president that feels like they're actually working for them. It's so rare these days.
Yes. Well, and I applaud Trump for sending the National Guard into cities where the governor there won't stop the violence and the corruption and all the hard rioting and looting that's going on and people getting hurt and killed. And, he swore an oath to defend against foreign or domestic enemies. And if the governor won't do it as the president and the executive branch of the United States, we'll send in federal troops and stop it. And, how dare a Supreme Court judge call for the plane to be turned around and bring deported terrorists back to this country? I would be in favor of going to that judge's home that evening and kicking his door in, because he doesn't have the power to do that. The whole Supreme Court doesn't. The president made a decision, and if he's acting like that, that's possible treason. And we need to question him and remove his judgeship. I'm tired of it. Trump's tired of it. The people are ready, Owen, right now. And I applaud you for your show, the Owen Report. Thank you for what you do, because we're not getting the truth in our news. Our enemies have stolen the narrative in this country, and everybody's searching to find the truth. So thank you for what you're doing.
It sounds like you're talking about judicial reform, because this has been an issue for me, which on the right, I think people in the Republican Party kind of look at that as a left-wing issue. The left has kind of used judicial reform in their own image to put criminals back onto the street. Obviously, they love to play the identity politics game to try to get people to vote for them. But I think that, people on the conservative side of the aisle are starting to realize that, maybe there is some judicial reform that actually we need to start looking at. We need to start investigating. You just pointed out, I think, one of the biggest issues that we have in this country, and that's left-wing activists in robes. They pretend to be judges. They take an oath like they're going to be impartial, but then once they get onto that bench, they're nothing more than a left-wing activist, except they're sitting on a bench instead of out in the streets, with a pitchfork and a torch.
Right. I mean, it's common sense again. If I'm a judge And I'm trying to bring terrorists back into this country and turn a jet around from flying them to their country to get them out of here after we spent all this money and work and risk lives to arrest illegal aliens inside of our nation that are here to destroy this country. What are we doing? You're supporting enemies of our country as a judge by dare saying that statement. And, Trump doesn't play with that, and I won't either. In our state of South Carolina, we're looking at all of that right now because senators have the ability to appoint judges, and most of them are lawyers. And when I ran for state senate in 2020, we went to one of his appointments, and they kicked all the people out of the room in Spartanburg because they said, we now got to work on some internal things. And the state senator was going to appoint one of his attorneys to be a judge in Spartanburg County. And will he ever lose a case with one of his employees as a judge that he appoints? We just had a girl, Logan Federico, murdered, and a judge was appointed after he had a bad record of being too lenient and releasing prisoners back out too early. And we had a felon convict that was released out. He had 39 arrests, 25 were felony charges. And he went in and murdered a young lady here in Columbia, South Carolina. This is all in the news. And so we've got to have major judicial reform because the judges we're picking, they're making bad mistakes, and it's a good old boy thing, and there's money involved, and these people are selling out. The love of money is the root of all evil, and I've never seen that so true in the last 10 years here in our country.
Well, and one of the instances that I've experienced myself and a lot of the January 6ers kind of had to go through, but it certainly is not isolated or exclusive to them, is what you learn about the judicial process is the whole thing is basically rigged against you. Mm-hmm. And it basically turns into this, let's say this triangle when you're in the courtroom. It's a triangle of a struggle session, and you have the judge here and you have the plaintiff, the defense, whatever here, plaintiff, defense, whatever here. But you realize when you're arguing against the government that you really don't have any rights. You don't have any rights. You don't have any chance at justice. The feds have already decided they're going to get their conviction rate. That's all they care about is the conviction rate. They don't justice. They might not even be able to spell it. Conviction, they'll tell you all about their conviction rates so that they can get work their way up the ladder. And then the judge wants to fill the prisons. The judge just wants to get the conviction, and then they can fill the prisons and everybody wins. And you're sitting there against the federal government and you're realizing, wow, the judge never thought about justice for me. They don't even care about the details of my case. The feds couldn't care less about justice or the case at all. They just want a conviction. They'll do whatever they can just to convict you. They'll charge you with 10 things just so that you see that and you say, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. I'm facing 50 years. So just take the plea. Just take the plea. They get their conviction. Judge can send you to prison. And you realize when you're in that triangle, what a lonely position it is. And it's a sinking feeling that in America, you as a defendant will have that hopeless feeling that there is no chance for me to have justice in this courtroom today.
Well, look at what they've done to President Trump and his family, and Roger Stone, and General Flynn, and Peter Navarro, and on and on and on. Our federal judges are not true Americans, are they? They're trying to prosecute with fake charges. 91 charges came up against Trump with a Russian collusion hoax. Lindsey was all over that. Now he's talking like, how dare you, question my phone calls. Is he above the law? No. He was part of the Russian collusion hoax.
He was part of the bloc that voted to expand FISA.
Right.
Congress didn't seem to have a problem with that until it was aimed against them. Isn't that how it works?
Yep. Well, things are flipping, and it's time to bring back the rule of law and arrest these traitors and put them in prison. Because this is America. We're not gone yet. We're fighting and we're correcting things, and it's time to flip it back. And America's ready for justice to be served. A good friend of mine, Ivan Reichland, that endorsed me, he's a fighter, and he said, in a news interview with CNN about his retribution list, that America will be furious if we don't start arresting people, starting with Hillary, Pelosi, and all the people that have betrayed our country. They're traitors. And America wants action. Pam Bondi's been in how long? How many arrests do we have? None.
Yeah.
Kash Patel, they both talk about lists, the Epstein files, all this stuff. What's happened? So if they're truly the Attorney General and the Director of the FBI, they need to do their job. If you don't have an arrest yet, what are you doing? Not one.
See why we like Mark Lynch? See why we want Mark Lynch in the Senate, guys? This is what our politicians
Are y'all
need to
ready
sound
to
like.
arrest people, criminals? Are you ready to have a peaceful life and get these evil enemies of our country off our streets? Are you ready to get rid of the school curriculums that our children are growing up to, being brainwashed to hate America? We got to get rid of these people, and we need your help. And, we got to get rid of the people that are in Congress first. Yeah. And I'm going to do my job to get rid of one evil person. It's time for him to go.
Yeah, amen to
and
that.
We'll work on the rest of them too.
Yeah, and I always have kind of felt, and this is the case with all things in life, whenever you're up against a challenge or a task, it's like once you do it the first time, then you realize, oh, I can do it. I kind of like to compare it to people that may lift heavy weights or whatever, and you're about to do the heaviest, let's say, deadlift you've ever done, but you've never lifted that much weight before. So you're kind of like, all right, I don't know, can I do this? And you do it once, and then you're like, I can do it. You do it twice, you do it 3 times and 4 times, and then you raise the weight. And it feels like that's kind of where we're starting to get politically. It's like, no, we can lift the weight. We can drain the swamp. We just have to see it done, and then the momentum will follow. We are at the University of South Carolina here. You mentioned this a moment ago. You mentioned this before we sat down here. We were talking. Talk about how speaking to the youth, speaking to college students, speaking to the younger generation of American conservatives, listening to their concerns and the things that they're thinking about and talking about, how has that influenced your campaign or perhaps even your politics?
Well, the other day at a presentation at Clemson University, I know we're rivals to Clemson, but
final game of the year, guys. That's right. Just wait.
Yeah.
Just don't go there yet.
And it's go Cox when that's on for me. But one student had a great question. When he said, "So I know you're America first, and it's about securing our borders, and I know your stance on immigration." And he said, "I want to hear." And to this great country, but we have created a major problem by allowing Biden and all the different administrations that kept the borders open. When I read a daily meditation by Neil Anderson, one of my daily meditations talked about that we're to have boundaries in our personal walk in our lives, or we become like nations without walls that are open for devastation and ruin. And so policies that we have to get back out up. And he said, I'm here at Clemson University. I'm an engineering major, and India is paying for these students to come in here and supporting their tuition. And they've lived here not quite 4 years. They're here 9 months a year, then they go home for the summer. And when we all graduate and get out of school, they'll take my job at half the pay that I need. And I don't know how I'm going to, afford to live or get a house. And I was born here. I'm an American, and we've got to quit letting all these countries come into this country with these melting pot ideas like you talked about, because they're never going to assimilate into American culture. They don't worship the one true God like we do. They don't speak our language, and it's not fair, and we're ruining our country and our heritage and everything we all stand for. And they're just here taking advantage of it, and we're subsidizing it. And he said, so I want to think about that. I said, that is something I've never thought of. I appreciate you bringing that angle up. And we want to hear from y'all later towards the end of this today, because, it's about y'all and it's about your future. And I want to know what worries you have and concerns you have as students and Americans that are going to go out after you get out of USC and graduate and start your life and build a family. I need to hear from y'all what you need from me. And it's all about that. We'll get to that later on.
Another issue with this that doesn't get talked about near enough, a lot of the foreign workers that get these jobs here, they send a lot of that money back home.
That's
They
right.
send a ton of that money. It actually ends up being in the billions of
Yep.
dollars almost annually. And so it's like, first of all, to me, that's unacceptable. We should be taxing that at 50%, I would say. I want to tax that at 50% minimum. If you're going to be working here and then sending the money back home to your family, we're going to tax that at a 50% rate.
Yep.
And maybe that'll turn some of that off as well. There's policy decisions that can be made to fix a lot of this stuff, but there doesn't seem to be any creativity. There doesn't seem to be any new ideas. Do you think that's because so many of these politicians, that's all they are as politicians? They don't have the business experience to kind of come up with creative ideas to solve problems?
That, and they never were true American first patriots to start with. They get in it for themselves and they build their empire. It's like Lindsey creating more wars, and he's a warmonger, and some of his biggest donors to his campaign ledger is Boeing and Lockheed Martin, because missiles and tanks and weaponry, that's big bucks. And I'm tired of seeing our young people going into endless wars, needless. It's not anything about America, and they're getting killed or coming back maimed with their legs blown off or whatever, and it's just horrible.
Yeah.
And they're getting rich doing it.
I have reached the conclusion that the last two presidents that were elected, and that doesn't count Joe Biden because he wasn't elected, but Barack Obama and Donald Trump, I think that the reason why they were able to get votes from, let's say, both sides of the political aisle, Obama, when he ran, was very much against Middle East intervention. He kind of postured himself against, as what the liberals were calling at the time, Bush's wars. But Obama got a lot of, I think, conservative votes in 2008 as well. I know a lot of conservative people that voted for Obama because they didn't like the wars. I would argue that Trump received a lot of left-wing voters for similar foreign policy issues. I think that most Americans on both sides of the aisle now are ready to, as you might say, bring the troops home, end the forever wars, stop the churning of the military industrial complex. And you're right, Lindsey Graham is like top 5 player in that game. He might be their star player on the roster for the military industrial complex, for the never-ending wars in the Middle East. How do we deal with that, especially on the right wing, when they turn it into a pro-military thing, or they turn it into a patriotic thing? How do we separate these things and say, hey, it's patriotic to bring the troops home. It's patriotic to think about the lives of the Americans. And at this point, it's really America first, I think, to start, as we were talking before this, bring that money home. Bring those trillions of dollars, invest it in America, invest it in our infrastructure instead of all around the world.
Yes, absolutely. Lindsey was over there in the Ukraine dealing with Putin. Finally, Trump brought it out after a couple of months and said, you need to watch your mouth over there, because, President Trump was negotiating peace between Putin and Zelensky, and Lindsey's promoting war. We haven't won a war since World War II. Every decision we've made to go to war has been unconstitutional. And our forefathers were divinely inspired by the one true God when we formed this country to write those rules and to make a decision to go to war. And if we need to, and we've had prayer and fasting and we vote on it to go to war because it's about defending America and it's gonna protect us, then absolutely we need to give them every reason, everything they need to go and win decisively. And I'm so glad Pete Hegseth is back and running that and making the new standards come back again, so that we have a fierce military that can't be dealt with. We need to contain that and keep those rules of who can be a warrior and who can't. And we don't need rules of engagement. Hey, they've shot 2 of us. Can we shoot back yet? All that was during Obama's time. And it's just horrible. If I'm wearing digit camo and carrying an M4 in a foreign land, and we've just slid down a wire on a helicopter and we're on the ground, we're shooting the enemy, and we need to allow our people to do that, but only if it's a last ditch effort and there's no other way. And we've made a constitutional decision. Should we ever go to war, it's the last measure.
And it does seem that people like Lindsey Graham are kind of keeping it going, right? They're keeping the perpetual wars going. And then they never seem to make an effort to stop it. If there's
Right.
ever a vote, it always goes one way.
Right. So Trump doesn't take no for an answer, and he believes in his negotiating power, and so do I. From my 40 years of running a successful business, competing against the big box stores in the country, we're just a family store. We have 110 employees, but I have to fight Home Depot and Lowe's and all those stores every day, and we eat their lunch every day. My son says, "What's our culture statement?" He's third generation. I said, "We don't have one written down, but I can tell you what it is. We love Jesus, and we're the Navy SEALs of this industry. And we've grown and grown and grown our business into a debt-free existence since 1999, personally and corporately. And we have people stay with us because we have a chapel in our company. We have 2 pastors on staff, and we teach the Word of God on Tuesday mornings and Thursday mornings. And we need people that know how to negotiate and keep peace as their first objective. And Trump has gone and sat down with Rocket Man in North Korea, showed him his armored vehicle and said, "Look at what we drive," and
my rocket is bigger than yours. Okay. Much
Yeah,
bigger. Let me tell you, gets up faster too. Very fast.
Yeah. And so in a nice way, just like I have to negotiate with manufacturers, and they know we're the player in our area, we're the brand builder in our market, we have market domination. And I said, sometimes you have to just be common sense honest and just say, hey, it's a decision you're going to make. It's all business. If you open up other dealers with those same brands in our market, you lose us. So what do you want to do? When we have the power of the United States and the thing that Trump has, they trust his word. Like I've told my son, when we've dropped manufacturer brands before, some of our employees and our vice president people were freaking out. What are we going to do? I said, we're the brand, and our customers trust us, and we're professionals, and it's about us. We can sell anything we want to. It's got to be a brand that we believe in, that's not junk that we would put in our own homes, that's quality. It's got to meet those standards first. But we're not going to be leveraged and compromised and being controlled by a manufacturer. We don't need it controlling us. I'm free in Christ, and I'm free indeed. In our country, Donald Trump is protecting our true freedoms, and they respect him because when he's back, they know he'll do what he says, but he won't say it unless he'll back it up, because he knows the integrity of his word as the president of the most powerful nation means something. And that's me too with my word. I've trained my son, don't jump too soon, because anything you tell your employees, they expect you to do it. You got to make sure you've thought about all the effects it'll have with a new incentive program or a new payroll system or healthcare or whatever we bring. And we need to always talk to them. We're not going to ever send them an email and tell them this is what you have to accept. I want to hear that they buy in and they like it, and they get to have a town hall meeting with me and hear. And I want to hear, because I don't want to make a decision too quick and have to reverse it and backpedal on it. That's not the way we do stuff. And Trump doesn't either. The world knows that, and they respect him. And who doesn't want peace, right? Rocket Man or the Putin or whoever it is, or Zelensky, do you think they really want to see their countrymen being killed and slaughtered and war and buildings exploding and death everywhere? Nobody wants that. That's why this country is so awesome and everybody wants to be here, because we all want peace. We all want freedom. We all want the liberty to live our lives without government interference and without wars going on all around us. And I think Trump's good at reminding people that, and the other leaders of other countries respect him because he's willing to come and sit down and have a conversation.
And that showed today. I mean, today was the ultimate show of that, and the respect that he got from the Gulf nation states, and he had European leaders in there as well. It was a show of respect, because he basically ran the whole thing. I mean, he got the podium at every step of the way. Every single event, the podium was for him. Nobody else but him. And so that's American leadership. No matter the disagreements that a lot of Americans may have foreign policy wise, it was our president that led this. It was our president that was there with the American flag that led these negotiations. And so that was good to see. The phenomenon that we're kind of looking at here with Lindsey Graham is one that expands across the nation. And that's we look at these politicians, they seem to be in there for life, but none of them are popular, right? It's like we scratch our heads. How does Nancy Pelosi stay in government for 50,000 years? I mean, how does she keep Adam Schiff? It's like, how do these people keep winning elections? Lindsey Graham is kind of starting to reach that point where we're like, when do we get rid of this guy? It seems like now is the time, South Carolina. Now is the time. Get out, vote for Mark Lynch.
Amen. And we're doing it. And now is the time. And people are sick of it. And they've got a viable candidate in me to take out a traitor, not a rhino. The word is traitor. It's time to get real. I'm 100% pro-life in my stance. We've got to stop. And, calling it abortion sounds nicer, I guess, but it's murder. And Lindsey Graham claims he's pro-life. He was endorsed by 3 fake life organizations, and they were door knocking for him this week. We had a pro-life attack in Greenville where these guys came into our market from Operation Save America. These guys are awesome. They're fighters. They've worked their butts off all week from 9 in the morning till 10 at night. And what an awesome wave of pro-life. And they went and stood in front of the abortion clinics and blocking the doors and getting arrested and then having events at the churches at night and supporting candidates who had some emergency elections come up in Greenville and knocking doors for them. And they're real patriots. And, Equal Protection South Carolina calls it murder. And back before Roe v. Wade, it was murder. And women had to come to a decision because it was a law that you can't have an abortion. And so we all have to think and pause, and it causes any of us, if we're going to choose to speed on the highway going home from this event today, that are we willing to get arrested or lose our driver's license, and cause an accident? And so we have laws for a reason that protects our freedoms. And women have to come to a decision, and with some encouragement and reading God's word, that we are intricately formed in our mother's womb, and God knew us before we were created. And it's all about life. And God, if he creates a new human being and gives that child purpose, he's going to provide everything that child needs for nourishment, shelter, being cuddled, being held, being kept warm and dry out of the weather. And God will do that. And if people think that through, they could keep the abortion clinics open. If the people were educated and the church did their job, it wouldn't matter if an abortion clinic was open or not. They wouldn't have any more customers anymore, right? And so we've got to put God first again. That's what'll make America great again. And we're all sworn to defend life. That's the first thing we talk about: liberty, pursuit of happiness. We cannot kill our own. We've killed up to 64 million of our own citizens in this country that deserve equal protection. And we don't have the right to murder them in the womb because it's an inconvenience.
That is a shocking number.
Ray Comfort, that puts out the 180 movies, a 30-minute documentary. I would ask anybody to take 30 minutes out of your life and watch that. You'll have more ammunition to talk about this subject, because as he walks people from this is my body, I can do whatever I want, to 180 degrees the other direction. I would never do that again. He asked them, Owen, through the interviews, and just lets them answer their own questions. It's okay to murder another human being when?
No comment.
Never.
That was my best interpretation of a liberal man, by the way.
Yeah. Well, the answer is never. It's not okay. If it's a self-defense thing, war, somebody's attacking us in our own personal homes tonight or something, that's killing somebody, where we have to resist evil and stop an attack in a defense situation. But innocent babies in the womb don't get that. We have to help that.
Well, we may expand on that here in a moment, but one of the leading voices in the pro-life push was Charlie Kirk. And, Charlie was actually just here at this campus not too long ago. And we also have a musician here, Jordan Page, who I invite to come up to the stage. wherever Jordan is. Yeah, come on up here. I think you might need to get your guitar. I don't know. Maybe just an idea too. We're going to have Jordan because now Jordan has been touring with Ron Paul for a long time. He's been performing at Republican events for a long time. And since Charlie was recently here, and obviously we all know what happened there, Jordan decided he was going to write a song in Charlie's memory, and he's going to perform that song for us here today. Are you going to be performing right there, guys? Do we have a camera on him right there? Is that good?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead. Yeah. If you want to step down for a second, go get yourself a water or something. We'll let Jordan come on up here, Jordan.
Yep. Come on.
Yeah.
Jordan.
Come on up. Mark Lynch will be right back here in a minute. Again, South Carolina, come on, let's go. Let's get Lindsey Graham out of there. We're all begging you, the entire country begging you right now. So, Jordan, why don't you just tell the audience about yourself a little bit, about what inspired this song, and then let her rip.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Owen. Test 1, 2, 3. Oh, is there a switch? Oh, test 1, 2, 3. There we go. There we go. Thanks so much. Thanks, Owen. So my name is Jordan Page, and I've been traveling around the country, around the world for a long time, speaking truth to power and taking on issues that might have been deemed polarizing, or just common sense things that made sense to me. The Lord really came into my life in a major way in 2006 and sort of repurposed my music to start speaking truth about a lot of different issues. And that caught the attention of Ron Paul, and I used to tour with him quite a bit, and still do events with him from time to time. But what I'm really about is freedom, and really trying to help people to take charge of their own freedom and not have it all rest in political candidates, and be part of the process. And one of I read songs about real people a lot of times. I have a lot of songs that are about actual people that have come up against the machine, the apparatus of violence of the state, and people like political prisoners and martyrs. And I can't think of a more potent example than the recent murder of Charlie Kirk. And I've been following Charlie for many, many years. And so really since he first began speaking on colleges, and his death affected me in a very, very deep way, my children, my wife, and we were just heartbroken about it. And I knew as soon as I saw what happened to him, when I saw the graphic video, I knew there was a song in there that needed to be sung. And so this is actually the debut. I've never played this really for anybody except my family. So you guys are the first to hear it. You took a peaceful man who gave a voice to his enemies. Ooh. And you silenced him for the whole wide world to see. And we saw you mock, and we heard you laugh. This is God dividing the wheat from the chaff. He's separating the goats from the lambs. They got hate in their eyes, they got blood on their hands. This is the turning point, this is the shot heard round the world. Oh, this is the altar call. Stand beside me, great and small. They can't kill us all. This one's for Charlie. You took a righteous man away from his family. stand like a slave who hates the free. You can't let it be. And you celebrated his blood on the stage in a moment marking the dawn of an age. Can you hear the prayers of the millions who cried in the darkest hour on the day that he died? This is the turning point. This is the shot heard round the world. This is the altar call. Stand beside me, great and small. They can't kill us all. This one's for Charlie. You cannot stop what's to come. The spark is a flame. You cannot stop what's to come. The whole world knows his name because that shot to the heart of the symbol to all. After that shot to the heart, will you answer the call? This is the turning point. The shot heard round the world. This is the altar call. Stand beside me, great and small. They can't kill us all. This was my turning point. This was the shot heard round the world. This is the altar call. Stand beside me, great and small. They can't kill us all. Has anybody reached the turning point? This was the shot heard around the world. This is your wake-up call. Stand together, one and all. This evil will fall. This one's for Charlie. Thank you guys so much. I'll be back up in a little bit.
All right, Jordan Page, everybody. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to get Mark back up here now. We're going to expand our conversation a little bit, but we were talking in the hallway about an important issue we addressed earlier, and that is our Second Amendment rights. We also kind of talked about maybe some issues with old Pam Bondi here, and it looks like these two things might have reached a intersection. Mark, it looks like Pam is taking things a little personal right now with some gun rights advocates groups, and we're not really hearing too much about that.
Yeah, we're hearing some. I know she's called for Gun Owners of America to supply her and the Department of Justice with members' names and information of people that are involved with these groups. These are Second
Sounds like
Amendment
a
gun
list.
rights.
It sounds like she's asking for a list.
Yeah. So I guess we don't get the Epstein list, but we're going to get a list on ourselves. So what's going on? You know, if I was in the U.S. Senate, I would be questioning that tomorrow. Why are you asking for a list of our citizens that have their Second Amendment rights to have guns, that are members of these awesome gun organizations that are fighting for our freedom to keep our weapons and protect our rights there in the Second Amendment. Why are you asking for those lists? You know, it's time to get her on the stage with a microphone in the Senate hearings and ask her, what are you doing? You know?
Well, they actually had the opportunity to do that this week. Nobody brought that up.
Yeah.
Nobody brought that up. And it's funny you bring up the Senate, the government shutdown is kind of a fake shutdown, but the government shutdown, the political football of the government shutdown that they love to talk about. The Senate just dodged town too. They were still in session and they had some hearings and some business to attend to. But they took Mike Johnson's lead and decided, you know what, we're going to go on a second summer vacation here. They all got out of Dodge as quickly as possible. Yeah, you didn't really hear anything from your South Carolina senators. You didn't hear anything from Lindsey Graham on that. I think he was ready to get out of town. I think he got on the first flight out of town. I haven't seen anything from him.
Well, he's had interviews by Fox News because
TV
he's
time.
mad that he's being questioned about his phone calls with the Russian collusion hoax. And, we all know the story about that.
Yeah. And again, these are people that were relatively silent when these allegations were first coming out. They were not just silent. They were the opposite. They were loud, and they voted to expand the FISA surveillance state. That was voted in Congress. And now all of a sudden, now that their names are on the list, now that they're being questioned, now that they're getting spied on, now they have a problem. And I think a lot of Americans see that and they say, this is exactly what we're talking about. They'll vote for the government to spy on us, but then when they find out it's spying on them, all of a sudden they throw their hands in the air and they're throwing a fit.
Right. They're above the law, I guess, right? They have the best health insurance programs there are. We have to deal with Obamacare and everything's out of control. They can't be investigated. They're not above the law. Our people, us in this room, this is our country. And our employees that think they're above the law need to be further prosecuted, further investigated. We got to get to the bottom of it. And America's ready for truth. We're all tired of it.
You bring up a name that is having a bit of a falling out, I think, right now with Trump's voter base. If it's popular to bash anybody in the administration, it's popular to bash Pam Bondi. I've not been shy about that. And so when you look at her body of work for the first couple months here, we obviously need more, but do you feel like anything is going in the right direction from the Attorney General? Do you feel like there's any pressure being put on her, whether it's the Epstein list or, a couple months ago when these riots started back up and you had these leftist groups going after the ICE agents? This really started a couple months ago, and Pam Bondi came out and she said, we're going to find out who's doing it. We're going to find out the funders. We're going to get down to the bottom of it. Well, she just said the exact same thing last week, and nothing has been done. How do we raise the pressure, or how do we finally get members of this administration or the next or Congress? How do we get them to do what they say they're going to do, or what the American people want them to do?
Yeah. Well, again, it's about getting the right people in, but I'm so thankful Tom Homan's in that position because he doesn't need her help. He understands how to run ICE and get these terrorists out of this country. And he stands up to all the jokes and the unpopular stuff or the attacks or whatever. But I'm sure he's positioned like we are, where he's tired of Pam Bondi's games. He's a fighter. He holds to the truth. He won't be compromised. And it takes a tough guy like that to do this job. And Pam has shown, especially asking for the list of registered gun owners with gun organizations fighting for our Second Amendment rights, she's showing her colors of who she is. So I'm very concerned about her, and she's producing nothing.
Yeah, and more importantly, Lindsey Graham, who you're going to be running against here, he has supported red flag laws. He has flip-flopped on this issue. And to me, flip-flopping, we'll just isolate this one issue right now. Flip-flopping on the Second Amendment, no tolerance. There should be zero tolerance from Republicans, the Republican voting base. Zero tolerance for somebody that flirts with the idea of red flag laws. Zero tolerance for anybody that ever flip-flops on the free rights for us to defend ourselves.
Right. He's not America first. He's an enemy. That's a traitorous position to take. If you're against ending our Second Amendment rights and producing red flag laws and pushing the thing that our forefathers knew, this has the strongest wording of any amendment in it, and it's a duty and an obligation for the United States citizens to protect their Second Amendment rights. If we lose that, if we can no longer stay armed and have a militia and be well trained to protect ourselves against an evil government, folks, it's over. Goodbye. You know, every country, when you look at the genocide charts history in the world, when the government sold their citizens into turning their guns in, we'll buy your guns from you, even bring them by here. The next day, genocide began, and the government started killing their own citizens in the millions. And so, you know, that's been probably our only true protection at the end of the day. Just like Japan, when they knew they didn't want to attack America, they knew because behind every blade of grass is a gun-toting citizen in America, right?
Yeah, you know, there was a certain group of limeys that discovered that in the 1770s, right here in this state, actually. Yep. They learned that one the hard way.
Oh, yeah.
They made a movie about that, I think.
Yep.
Pretty famous one. That was right here in South Carolina.
Yes, sir.
And I know that this has been a big push here as we're about to have the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. I've seen it all over South Carolina, just how important it was during the Revolutionary War, and that gripping to your gun like it's part of you when you're fighting for survival, when you're fighting for your freedom. It's very much in South Carolina's culture, which Lindsey Graham doesn't seem to exhibit at all.
Right. Yeah, he's the complete opposite.
It seems like if somebody handed him a gun, his knees might start knocking.
Yeah.
You know, his knee, he might get rubber knees.
Yeah.
Fall. I mean, he start crying too. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure what would happen should we see that. But I want to bring something up that I think is very important. And Mark didn't want to bring this up, but I do now, and I think it's very important. You are funding your own campaign. And when I was doing a little bit of research into your campaign and your background, it was something that stuck out to me. And you can, you know, feel free to say the dollar amount if you want. It's not small. But to me, this is such an important factor when you decide who to vote for. You are funding your own campaign. You've basically put your entire retirement on the line to run this race. Talk about that.
I don't know about the entire amount, but my wife and I prayed about it, and we know that Lindsey Graham has a lot of money coming in from the industrial military complex and other horrible organizations supporting him because he's making trillions of dollars in a corrupt way for many, many agencies and people that are involved with his leadership. And all that'll come to an end when I get in. So we know all hell will come up against this campaign, but Lindsey's just a man. And when we prayed about it and we went all in, my wife and I agreed because I talked to Roger Stone. I met him down in Florida where he lives, and we had a luncheon with him and our campaign team. And he said, Donald Trump's going to want to see a couple of things. How much skin do you have in the game? And then he's going to want to see your polling. Now, we know Donald Trump has endorsed Lindsey again, and we talk about that when I do presentations. And we just know that it's like Roger Stone said, I have his personal phone number in my cell phone in my coat pocket, and I've known him for 45 years. And if he changes his cell phone number, he'll call me and say, Roger, this is my new phone number, because they love each other. But he says, having said that, I don't know why he does some of the things he does. So all we can come to is that there's a lean Senate majority, and Donald Trump knew he needed Lindsey's vote for the big, beautiful bill and some other things, and that Lindsey could draw a couple of people his way if he didn't want to vote for it. So he's using him. That's part of the game in politics. But we know that Lindsey had over $100 million in his last election. We saw on his ledger when he ran against the Democrat.
Not
Jamie
his
Harrison.
money.
No. I signed the front of my checks. They don't come from China or the Ukraine or evil places. They come from just hard work, running a business, being a successful businessman. So my wife and I prayed about it, and we moved $5 million of our own retirement fund to seed this campaign launch and let people see we're all in, we're committed. Yeah, thank you. And it's not my money. You know, God owns everything. There was a time in my life where, like every day at the end of the day at work, at our company, our family business of 73 years, my father gave me a picture of a modern day businessman wearing a suit like we are, talking to Jesus in two chairs like this apart from each other. And that's the location in my office where that painting is, where I pray and thank God for another day. And years ago, when Sarah and I first got married, we've been married 37 years, standing back up after praying to God and thanking him for another great day, because he didn't make bad days. He doesn't create bad days. That's all our attitude. And I stood up and I realized with an overwhelming, just awesome understanding that the dollar in my wallet, my German Shepherd at home, my wife, these employees, I don't own anything. And then there's this respectful prayer request. God, please help me be a good steward over all of it. And I've prayed the Jabez prayer for years that God would bless me and my entire family today and forever indeed. And that's a prayer that just says, help me be over more of your kingdom work. Help me be a good steward over bigger picture kingdom work. So, you know, Sarah and I were talking the other day. She said, when I met you, I never thought we'd be here running for a United States Senate position. This is insane, you know, but it's just God's work, and he's prepared me with a lot of things, and we're ready to do this. And, you know, I'm here today, and I want to thank Donnie and Jacob and all the guys with the Palmetto group here at the University of South Carolina for helping us put this on. We came here to a Charlie Kirk event, and it was on Green Street right out here, and it was packed. I never could get up to him to say anything, but what a great event. And the second half of the event, the last hour, it started pouring down the rain. I mean, we were all looked like we fell in a swimming pool, and none of the students left. We thought, well, that's the end of this. No, nobody left. And it became a pro-life conversation the second hour of the event. And one of the students came up and he got to the mic. You know how Charlie had an open mic for him, like we're going to have in a second. And he said, Charlie, I'm so thankful that my mother's attempt to murder me didn't work, because I'm here and I have life and I can fulfill my purpose God created me for. And I'm telling you, that ignited a whole nother level of conversation about pro-life, and it gave us chills and just encouragement about these young people. They're ready for truth. They're ready for real life. They're ready for real leadership in this state. And they want the chance to have a future like we've all had. And they're so thankful. Trump's the president. And that pro-life group and everything Charlie Kirk stood for, and he unapologetically promoted God everywhere he went. And he merged that conversation, because there's never been separation of church and state. The enemies told us that lie. And Charlie helped unravel that and get everybody to understand we're supposed to run the state, not the opposite. It's the church's obligation to stand and resist evil at whatever level it needs to. And we've got to get back to that, and we are. And my wife and I, having done mission trips all over the world, we know the next mission trip is the swamp in D.C. And that's where we're going to bring God back first again. And, you know, we're not turning a jet around with terrorists on it. We're not going to come after our guns ever. That should be a law that, you know, you better be careful talking that way, because Pam Bondi or a citizen or whoever you are. I know it's freedom of speech, but it isn't to me to burn an American flag. That's a slap in our face. That's just the most ultimate thing you could do in a true American's face like mine, to burn a flag in front of me. And I know that's an expression, but that's an action. That's not words. That's burning what our country is represented by. And, you know, if that's not an enemy of our country, I don't know what is. There needs to be something for that. So we've got to get back and protect our freedoms because they're under siege. We're not one generation away from losing this country. We're one vote away from losing it. And there's 20 new things coming at us at the state level and at the national level every day. But we got to get back on the offensive and enforce the rule of law and start showing people the game's over. We're taking our country back.
It does seem the stakes get higher with every election cycle. I think that is a true phenomenon. Yeah. And I don't want to get lost here in the fact that you're funding your own campaign because,
well, we still need more funding.
Of course, you're up against
Yeah.
the machine. You're up against the Lindsey Graham machine. But the reason why I say this is because that's probably, I'm guessing, less than 1% of candidates for Congress fund their own campaign, especially to a degree that, hey, I can run a campaign with this. Maybe they donate to themselves here or there, but you're all in. To me, that's a bet. What you've done is you've bet not just the dollar amount, but you basically bet your entire life. You said, I've worked my entire life to earn this, and I've worked my entire life to provide for me and my wife and my family. But you know what? I'm going to bet everything instead on the country. I'm going to bet everything instead on the future of America. Is that how you think of it? Is that how you analyze it? Because to me, that's how I see it. I see a man who's willing to bet on America with everything, with his own skin.
It's a duty, and it's a stewardship responsibility. Our 4 beautiful grandchildren, this young crowd here at University of South Carolina and all over the country, they need the opportunity to have what we have been enjoying all these years. God has blessed me. And again, he's the owner. You know, it takes an act of faith to stroke a big check for a church, right? Or send money to Africa to get Bibles into a certain area of the world where they've never heard the gospel of Jesus. And it becomes a faith issue. Do I believe that if I seek God first and his kingdom of righteousness, that all these things shall be added unto me, that he talks about in Matthew 6:33 through 34. And it's in a section of Matthew about worry, because we're worried about how are we going to make it? How are we going to live? How are we going to get food? How are we going to have shelter? How am I going to find a job when I get out of school? Those are all real concerns as students. You know, how am I going to make it when I leave mommy and daddy's protection and home and I've got to go out and make it on my own? But if I learn to seek God first and his kingdom of righteousness, and the God I serve is the only true one God there is. He's faithful. He says, I will provide you everything. And I'm a testimony to that in my life, in my personal walk. When I was 25 years old and came to the end of Mark, in my foolishness after being saved at 11 years old, my name was in the book of life. And if I'd have totaled a car or died or whatever, I know I would have been with Jesus. But Jesus wasn't my Lord. My Lord tells me he'll provide everything I need if I keep him first. And I have seen that happen. You can't outgive God. And so putting $5 million in was a no-brainer for us because it's his money. He has all the money. He's the owner of it. I'm just stewarding over it. He's watching how I manage my money and what I do with it. And I trust him. He'll take care of us. He has all these years, you know. And I'm his child. And Charlie Kirk knew that, you know. My life verse is, there is no greater love than he that would lay down his life for his friends, in John 15:13. And in John 15:14, Jesus keeps it accountable. He adds, I call you my friends if you obey my commands. Charlie Kirk obeyed God's command. He was unapologetic. He preached the gospel everywhere he went. He explained there's no separation of church and state. He kept the conversation open so he could get an audience. And he honored with love of God and love of others, and allowed people to express their opinions. That helped him answer their questions. And he went out in faith. And that's how I live my life. You know, I'm God's child, and the enemy can't touch me. No weapons formed against me shall prosper. And if God is for me, who can be against me? And I live my life that way every day. And we teach that to our employees at work in our chapel. And that's why I'm running for the United States Senate, because there's so much evil we're fighting. It's all spiritual warfare. And it takes a strong person of faith to go in that won't get pulled towards center, because I'm far right too, like you. Or we just call it truth, common sense, duh. We're here to do the right thing. And it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. I'm not here to win your friendship. I'm here to do what I'm supposed to do. That's the truth, and help run this country the way God wants me to, with biblical principles, honoring the Constitution. That's my only authority, is to protect your God-given, unalienable rights. That I don't have any other power than that. I'm just your representative that you're going to elect to go there and do the right thing and fight against evil at the deepest level. And people have to understand the spiritual warfare side of that, because we don't fight flesh and blood. It's the principalities in the heavenly realm and the evil that we fight against every day. Lindsey's just deceived. I pray for him. He's lost. His lifestyle doesn't match the character of somebody that deserves to be in the United States Senate, not in this country. And we've got to get people like him out and get godly people in and take it back. We got a window of time with President Trump. Help me get there so we can help do this. I know Trump would rather have a guy like me that he didn't have to watch every minute and make a negotiation with to get him to vote right. I'll just vote right, because that's the right thing to do. It's pretty simple.
Lindsey Graham lifestyle. Boy, you really set me up for one there. I'm just going to pass on that. We're going to pass on the Lindsey Graham lifestyle.
Come on, Owen.
No. We'll keep it relatively clean here, relatively enough. But you know what? We are going to take questions from the audience coming up here, but I don't want them to have all the fun, because I anticipate somebody will ask this. I know that you've been asked this before. When it comes to campaign contributions, Lindsey Graham, I believe, is, over his time as a politician, an over 7-figure recipient of AIPAC funds. Do you anticipate that AIPAC will come coming? Do you have a prepared response for them?
I won't take a penny from AIPAC.
Do you think that this is a major issue that we're facing in Congress? Now, AIPAC gets a lot of the attention, but obviously there's a lot of influence, right? People talk about a lot of different influence factors when it comes to foreign lobbyists. How can we cut this out? How can we return a level of trust to the American people that the massive foreign lobbyists, there's special interests, and then there's foreign interests? How can we get the foreign interest out of politics?
By getting the right people in that they won't have a reason to come forward anymore. I know they come to the parking garage here in South Carolina with envelopes of cash, and it takes somebody that's not going to get emboldened or leveraged with money, where they're held with something over them, taking the money. Again, there's a decision. Do I press A or B? Our salespeople at our store every day, they have to decide if they're helping another salesperson's customer to just write up the sale because they're commission only. Do I take a little bit of this or give it all to him because it's the right thing to do? The guys that love the Lord, that do the right thing, are far more blessed and have God's favor in their career with me than the people that try to steal. It's stealing. Right? It's taking bribes. And we don't need people that are lawmakers in our legislature in this country that'll take a bribe. I don't know that you can stop evil, but you have to send men and women that are strong enough to resist it and will say no to the temptation. Because again, the love of money is the root of all evil. That's follow the money, and everything we're doing, we're seeing that everywhere, right? And usually there is an end to the money trail where people are getting corrupted and they're taking the money, then they're obligated and leveraged and controlled by that organization to do what they do, or they're going to get in trouble for it. And so it's just a faith issue again, Owen. Integrity is doing what's right when nobody's looking, and saying no to the money is a big one that that only strong enough people with their faith can withstand that temptation.
Well, and I think you already have the track record that proves it. You stood up against the COVID tyranny. You stood
Yep.
up against law enforcement trying to shut you down and all the
Yep.
threats that came along with that.
Right.
And then you proved it again when you decided you're going to sign your own check to fund your own campaign again, which most politicians wouldn't even think. It wouldn't even be a thought that crossed their mind. They'd probably melt like the Wicked Witch of the West underwater. They just, fund my own campaign, just be an empty suit.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, you've already proven that. You've already had the track record. Now, what do you do about this block, this wall, it seems, in Washington, D.C.? I look at something right now. I'll make a pretty safe bet here that it's pretty popular. How does government shutdown sound to people? You like government shutdowns? What about abolishing the Fed? How do we feel about abolishing the Fed? Oh, even more popular. So it's one of these issues that what I've learned in politics is I can go to pretty much any group. I've gone to left-wing groups. I've gone to right-wing groups. I've gone to non-political groups. And whenever you actually get down to the bottom line, which is, all right, how do you really feel about the government? How do you really feel about the government in your life? How do you feel about the government doing this, that, the other thing? Would you like to shut down the government? Would you like to abolish the IRS? Very popular, no matter what party affiliation, no matter where you're at, your background. These are very popular things. Why isn't it that the most popular things amongst the people that spread across party lines, we never get them in D.C.? We never get what the people want. We never get it in D.C. How do we change this mentality? How do we change this tradition of D.C. getting what it wants and the people not getting what they vote for?
You know, it's such a horrible job. It's like all the campaigning we have to do. We're going all over the state. We bought a van, had it wrapped. We're spending money crazy, even just traveling, and it's tiring. And I was telling somebody the other day, this is a lot of work and a lot of money to go to a terrible job. But, you know, so a lot of people don't want to run for office. But I don't really look at it that way. I think this is an opportunity, and with what I know about the deep state and the Islamic infiltration into our country and communist stuff that's going on, and everything is completely upside down. I can't not run because it's a calling of the people. They've prodded me over the last 5 years when I didn't win my state Senate race. They said, when are you going to run for something? We need somebody like you. There's nobody else out here. There's other people. I'm not the only one. Trump's not the only one. But we need more people to trust the Lord and take their skills and their, you know, whatever they're gifted in and what their purpose is. And if it's a true calling and you pray for it, then you decide to run and you get good people in, and we have an opportunity to correct things. The Charlie Kirk thing, what he did with his dash and his life, look at what's happened with that. It's spreading like wildfire, and we have a revival that we need to all participate in and get encouraged, because there was a single man that was willing to lead, like Donald Trump, like I'm willing to do, and that's okay. I'll go first. In our buying group, in our industry, the appliance bedding furniture industry, we have 3,000 members, and we're in the top 80 of the group in the country, as the largest dealers in the country. And when we have 3,000 people in a convention room, and we have a horrible thing going on with a manufacturer where they're stabbing us in the back and they're not going to pay our volume rebate or something, everybody's afraid to say something. Why? They're afraid they'll have their deal taken from them or something. These people are already greedy. That's why they're stealing more from us. And they have mic runners up and down the aisles, and they'll bring the mic over to me and say, you're going to have to lead it off, because nobody wants to talk about it. They don't want to confront evil. And we've all heard that saying, all evil needs to succeed is for good men to sit around and do nothing. But I'm not built that way. I've seen God perform miracles in my own life. My wife and I have seen babies in Haiti when we were there right after the earthquake, working for 2 weeks. We saw it all week. We saw babies that died. Everybody was dying from dehydration. All the children had been raped in the tent cities because their families are dead, and they're growing up in just a massive tent city. And we saw dead people come to life. We saw exorcisms performed, demons exorcised out of people. It's real spiritual warfare that you can see. And a lot of people on our mission trip, when an exorcism was being performed one night, they said, I don't know if I can stay here and watch that. I said, boy, I am. I'm going to watch God perform a miracle. He that is in us is greater than he that is in the world. And we need to take that authority and especially back into Congress and use it and be faithful. And that's just me. And, do we really believe Charlie Kirk really believed? And the greatest act of love is laying your life down for your friends. And I call you my friends if you carry out my commands. And Charlie did that, and he was a believer, and he was unapologetic about it, and I'm that way too. And I'm not just riding this wave. I was like this before I ever knew Charlie Kirk. I'm older than him. God, family, country is what this is all about. God's first in this campaign. We have a chapel in our store, and we have the flags of Israel and Jerusalem hanging from our ceiling with our other American flags and Don't Tread on Me flags and the Christian flag. We don't have a Christian flag up here, but we have that additional flag in our chapel at our store. And I've had other business people ask us at dinner in between training speaker meetings in our industry, one guy saw our ad and says, you're on your hours, it says Sunday, home with family. And I said, that's right. My store manager was talking to him. He said, how do you do that? He said, you have a cell phone? Call your manager right now and tell him to close the store this Sunday. And I said, well, I wouldn't do that this Sunday if your ad says you're open, but you can take that out of your ad and then tell your employees next Sunday you're closed. Are we following what God recommends or not? I don't know. My competitors are open on Sunday. We'll lose business. We need to let them have a few crumbs just to have something to compare so that people can go see them and then come back, run to us, say, yeah,
how noble of you.
You're the better choice, but all that's good, but I'm not going to work on Sunday. So why would I put my people through that? I'm not going to work till 10 at night. So why would I ask my employees to do that? It's just common sense decision that's based on us and the customer and what honors God in every decision we make. And that's the way this country will only run. That's the only way.
Speaking of running the country, a major thing that I always think about, I always envision, I think the youth is starting to catch up with this in the internet age. Most Americans don't leave the country. They might not get exposed to all kinds of different things, right? The countries that are really less, let's say like Haiti, where they have to deal with a lot of stuff. And then there's upcoming countries, China, the Gulf nation states. And so you kind of, now in the age of the internet, you get a better idea of, okay, where is the world going? Where is it developing? Where are countries struggling? What are the things that they have in common or the things that they don't? But the one thing that I always think about is the potential of American, the potential of the average American, the potential of the country of America. The only politician that I've ever seen really talk about this at all is Donald Trump. He seems to be the only one that gets it. And I think, Trump, obviously he lives in a golden penthouse, right? He lives a lavish lifestyle. So he kind of sees that. He likes nice things. He likes Mar-a-Lago to be nice. He wants his guests, his members there to have the nicest experience. I don't know if you've ever stayed at a Trump hotel, best hotel I've ever stayed at every time. And so I think about the potential of America and how we're not even near where we could be. We're like maybe 10%, maybe less, quite frankly. And as I sit here and I watch the Gulf nation states come up and their metropolitan areas, we're watching all of these cities in China kind of come into the new age. And before people freak out like, oh, you're talking about, no, the dirty commies have better cities than us. We're going to let the dirty commies have cleaner infrastructure and better infrastructure than us? Come on. If China can do it, then certainly we can do it. There's policy decisions with trade. There's other things about keeping the money here instead of going overseas. But when you think about the American potential, what does that mean to you? What do you think America's true potential is compared to what we've seen really for the last couple decades, I'd say?
Yeah, and we've let go of that, and we've allowed the enemies of our nation to come in here and start undermining everything and getting involved at the local county council, the state house, and at the federal level in Congress. And like the burning of the cities in 2020, all that happened. And again, that's not America. That's our enemies here doing that. And they're controlling the narrative, and they're buying out the shares of stock on the news. And that's the first thing in warfare: get control of the comms. And so, again, thank you for having a truth podcast for people to receive the true news, because America needs to get back to its potential. We've allowed our enemies to write our college and high school and elementary school curriculums. So they attacked our children. What they didn't do, they didn't kill them in the womb. They're brainwashing them when they get born, and they're teaching them everything that's anti-America, anti-God, and we've allowed it. God forgive us. I'm praying for forgiveness, because I hadn't been in this game but the last 10 or 12 years. And I've been enjoying life, and I'm working hard, running a business and raising children in a godly way. But I wasn't really involved in a deep understanding of politics at all. But boy, I am now, and it's wicked evil. But we've got to be America first again. I mean, just keeping our cities clean, going to third world countries for years on mission trips. It really did let us see how good we have it. My wife went first to the Dominican Republic, and I didn't go on that one. She went on the first mission trip of like 20 she went on. And she came back, and when she got dropped off with her ride, she fell through our doors in tears because of how good we have it. The water won't kill us when we drink it out of the faucet. It almost will now, but Greenville used to have the second best water in the world at one time. But you know what? In those third world countries, when the kids have a rock and a stick, and they don't have any parents, and they're living in a Vision Trust, Christian Child Protection Agency upbringing, where they can have medicine and water and biblical instruction and an education and a safe place to live. And they took them out of a sex trafficking organization and freedom, and they're teaching them about Jesus. Those kids are as happy as they can be, because they don't know what they're missing. But, America allows us to come here and work hard. You get paid for your hard labor. We've got our enemies overtaxing us. We have to get rid of that. We have to get rid of property tax in the state of South Carolina. That's horrible. If I own my car and my home, why do I have to pay a protection fee to keep it? Right? Our income tax levels are well beyond what we left England for to start this great experiment. And we've got to get back and end that. Tariffs are awesome. Tariffs will help pay to run this country, and it equalizes the manufacturing competition in the world. I've seen that in our industry. We lost our American TV manufacturers, all of them. Zenith, RCA, Magnavox, Motorola, Philco, because we had TVs coming in from Japan back in those days in the 70s and early 80s, till they wiped out all of our American manufacturing because they were paying their laborers 32 cents an hour. They're working in a horrible sweatshop, just abusive atmosphere to live in, to work for the factories in Japan for Sony, Panasonic, Hitachi, Toshiba, JVC, and they took over the American TV industry. Years before that, Greenville was the textile capital of the world, and China took that over. And my father said, that's awesome to have these big industries here until they all lose their jobs and that company bankrupts, and then there's a recession. A deep depression happens because the whole city's out of work, right? And that's not America first. And we've got to bring back manufacturing. Our governor is allowing the sale of our land in South Carolina to China. So we're selling our soil out from under our feet and losing the opportunity to have a neighborhood or a business, or move and buy some acreage and have a farm and grow our own food and have cattle, or ride a dirt bike or shoot a gun or whatever we want to do, because we're selling our land to the enemies of the United States. How's that happening? All this is not common sense. It's pure evil. It's totally ridiculous. It's decisions that are made not by rhinos. And I want y'all to bring the word in. It's called enemy or traitor. Maybe they took a sellout. They took the money and they become all about themselves, like Lindsey Graham and all these evil congressmen have. And we've got to get them out of office. You know, we had Donald Trump write an executive order at the first of the year when he first took office to end transgender surgery, mutilation of our children. Somebody, you know, from kindergarten through 18, they need parents and they need wise decisions to help them. And some of these kids that have made a transgender surgery thing when they're 25 years old, there's a high suicide rate because they cut all their junk off and they're still the original sex they were. Oops, you were lied to. You can't change your gender. There's only two, male and female. And Lindsey Graham voted for the confirmation of Judge Herson, one of Biden's judges. And Lindsey's talking about his judge selections and all that stuff right now. And I'm bringing up the truth about who he picks because Judge Herson came out and overturned Trump's decision to end transgender mutilation surgeries of our children. That's not America first when we're allowing the attacks of our own children in this country. And so when God's missing, the cleanliness, the purity, the holiness, everything that is good is gone. Everything that's bad is considered good. And it's all about God first again. We've got to bring prayer back in schools and teach our kids what's going on. So when they're tempted out here and the colleges are doing horrible stuff, a friend of mine that I raced motocross with, his son was at Clemson and his son dropped out with a 3.8 average GPA because 50% of his classes were promoting PowerPoints. This was a couple of years ago, still doing it. Asking the children, you might want to consider being gay or having a transgender surgery. And he's like, Dad, why? He's taking a picture, filming the screen in his classroom for 45 minutes. The professor changed the teaching from a business class to that. He said, what are we doing here? He dropped out and started his own excavating landscaping company. He's killing it. And he just dropped out of Clemson. I don't need this. I'm getting half of what I paid for.
Yeah, it's almost like a Saturday Night Live skit. You show up for the first class, let's say it's economics, business 101, whatever. You sit down and the professor rolls out a PowerPoint about how you can have a transgender surgery.
Right.
You're kind of looking around like, is this economics 101? Are we in the right? And it's like, no, this is economics now. We're talking about transgender surgeries. We're talking about identity politics here. That's part of the problem that we have at the universities. I don't know what it's like here. That was my first exposure, let's say, to liberalism is when I went to the University of Missouri, Columbia. First time you're introduced to a lot of this stuff, you don't recognize it at the time. You just think it's a new world. I'm learning new things. And then in the aftermath, you realize, wow, they are really propagandizing these students. And I think it goes back to the same issue with the judge. These aren't professors. These are left-wing activists that get jobs as professors, and then they indoctrinate the youth is what they do. But I want to stay on topic there. You can't talk about cutting taxes enough. This is another issue where no matter who you ask, the average American says, yes, please cut taxes. It's the best thing you can do for the American economy, in my view, is cut taxes. Let the Americans keep their money. And yet it never happens. 85%, maybe more. If it was put on a ballot today, would you like to cut taxes? Or just one? Would you cut property taxes? Overwhelming majority would vote to do it. And yet we never get it. We never get the things that we want out of Congress. And it has to change. And I get back to your business instincts, your business success. And I'll use this as kind of a metaphor before we open up to audience questions. You're running the most successful business. You have the most successful business in South Carolina. And somebody comes to you and they say, Mark, you're too successful. Okay. You're so successful now. You're kind of a bad guy, actually. Your success makes you an evil person. So what we're going to have to ask you to do is we're going to need you to give some money to this business down the street over here. We're going to need you to give some money to this business down the street over there. And then, you know what, this business over here too, because it's just, we need equality is what we need. We need equality, and maybe we need diversity too, because their logo is a little different than yours and their owner looks a little different than yours. So we're just going to have you give your give your money away that your business is earning here for equality. Well, eventually, what's going to happen to your business, Mark?
It'll go bankrupt.
And to me, that's exactly what's happened to the United States of America. We were guilt tripped for being the best country in the world. We were guilt tripped for being the most successful with the highest standard of living. So in come the bleeding hearts, and they say it's too much success. You have to share your success with the world. And now we've been doing that for multiple decades, and look at us now. We have President Trump in Egypt today saying, wow, you guys have safer streets than us. In Egypt, safer streets than us. It should be unacceptable. It should be intolerable. It should be unimaginable. And yet here we are because of this exact thing. And so I think it's time, as we were talking about before, and maybe you can emphasize this before we open up to audience questions, it's time for the American people and the government that does this, it's time to keep our money here. It's time to keep our money here. It's time to rebuild our own infrastructure. It's time to rebuild our own communities, our own metropolitan areas. It's trying to bring back that high standard of living that the Americans used to have that's slowly slipping away because we've been cutting checks to every country around the world.
Right. And that's against the Constitution. We're not supposed to give out foreign aid. And we're bankrupt. So don't even come to me with a check request unless it's for fixed expenses. We have to pay rent in our life if we can, if we have any money at all. If we're bankrupt personally, maybe we don't buy a new car right now or a new sofa. We're going to have to live frugally till we get out of debt and get out of bankruptcy before we sign any more checks. But, you know, capitalistic society, one of our salesmen one time was talking about that. There's always somebody at the top. We have 32 salesmen in our company, and somebody's at the bottom. And one of our guys that leaned a little left, and we've kidded him about it over the years, but I think he's come to the right now because he's had enough pain too. We have one of our top salesperson's his name's Rowdy, and Warren was saying, why don't we just let Rowdy just kill it like he normally does and just let him share all that with us? But, you know, that promotes no competition. It's socialism for dummies, which is Marxism later. And people are getting lured into that just to let the government take care of you. And in 2020, COVID did all that. We sent people home, and I didn't have any employees leave, but I had friends who did, and their employees were telling them, why should I come back to work? The government's paying me more than you did to stay home. And we all were learning about all of that. And one thing COVID did is we got to see what our kids were looking at in their computers at home. And we saw the pornography they were teaching and brainwashing our kids into and all the evil stuff. So God still used that time as a time of information where things were getting exposed, and we got to decide whose kids are they. These are our kids, and how dare you teach a third grader what you're teaching them in these curriculums and these school books and online that they're checking out. We started getting involved in finding out what they're doing. And mama bears went to the school board meetings and raised Cain and put an end to all this stuff. So until we get the bad actors out, unfortunately, all of us, we the people, are going to have to show up in droves like we've done at our state house when our political activist organization in Greenville, after my state run, we started the United Patriots Alliance, and Henry McMaster said, we're going to appoint a health czar in South Carolina. And he wanted a forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Edward Simmer, that's for forcing the military to take vaccinations or be fired, babies in the womb to get vaccinations. And nowadays, with all the information we have about the vaccine, you're just wicked evil or you're just stupid. You can't be in the position. And I don't need anybody dictating to me what my medical freedoms are. I get to decide if I go to a doctor or not. You can wear a mask. I'm not. You know, I don't want to breathe in my carbon dioxide exhale over and over and over. That's just not good for me. I need fresh oxygen coming in. And it doesn't do anything anyway because our eyes are open. And, you know, we've learned that on mission trips. You can't open your eyes in the shower. You'll get Montezuma's revenge because the water's so filthy. But anyway, we fought that, and we took groups of 100 people here to Columbia to the State House right down the street, and we printed up signs. We had about $112,000 come in, and we got cooperative help from other groups in the state, and we showed up in force, and we went to the Senate building, the Gressett building, and got in front of all 46 senators and said, if you dare confirm the appointment of McMaster as health czar, you're finished. You won't be here next year. And we stopped that appointment of a health czar in South Carolina. So it takes a lot of work. Or we live with the consequences of just letting evil plow in and just continue to take everything we have, all the liberties we once enjoyed. They're all going to be gone. And so we're in the fight, and we have to stay in the fight. And, you know, Donald Trump, when he got shot in the ear, stood up and he told his Secret Service guys, wait a minute. He took that moment. That he was still in the fight. Are we willing to go through that persecution and get back up again and get back up again and get back up again and fight? If we don't, it's over, y'all. The enemy's well organized and they're fighting, and we have to be in the fight. And we need leaders like myself and Trump and all of those that are willing to go through the persecution, that have skin in the game, that get in this fight, that are willing to fight for you and be your voice in D.C. or Columbia or at the county level. We got to take America back. It's too good. We can't let this go. We've got to stay in it. Help me. Help me get there.
And that's why we need to get Mark Lynch in the Senate, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just that Lindsey Graham sucks, which I think we all agree he does.
Beep.
Maybe literally, but that's another story. But no, you're an excellent candidate. You're a beyond excellent candidate. And I hope maybe Trump will come around and see what you represent. Maybe he'll put you over the top. I hope that would be the case. And before we go to the audience questions here, you said something, and I think about this all the time. And when we deal with these dirty liberal commies in this country, you said they're always trying to take, right? They're always trying to take. They just always want to take. They always want to take. And I realized something, because what I do is I cover news, I cover headlines. About 2 to 3 years ago, there was this trend in the headlines that was talking about how people that spend time at the gym or exercising tend to lean right wing. And then there ended up being other one-offs of these studies like, oh, right-wingers are extremists and Nazis and all this other stuff. But it all derived from the study where they were asking people that worked out 5 days a week, whatever, where are you at politically? And they found out that they lean heavily right. And it hit me when I talk to a lot of these people at the gyms that I go to or play basketball with. It hit me, and I'm like, why is it that culture seems to lean right? And it hit me. It's because you can't take that from me. You can't take that from me. Whatever I do in the gym to gain strength, endurance, whatever, there is nobody that can steal that from you. Only you can earn that, and only you can keep that. And the left hates it. They want to be able to take everything from you. They want to be able to take what you've earned, what you've built, and they want to say, hey, I get some of that. That's not how it works. That's not how the real world works. And when it does go that route, we always see what happens. And it never is good for the people. It never ends up good for the people. So when you think about the people that want to take from you, that's all it is. That's all it is. Anything that they can take, they will. And they've proven it time and time again. Anything they can take from you, they will. And that's why you have to hold on to it for dear life. And that's where we're at right now in this country. We've just done 2 hours with Senate candidate Mark Lynch. We got to defeat Lindsey Graham. He's the one to do it. And we'll talk about the one disastrous foreign policy that Lindsey Graham continues to support very vocally, by the way. Maybe the worst foreign policy decision ever made in the history of this country. And Lindsey Graham can't support it enough. But we're going to take questions from the audience now. So I would have Jordan come back up here. He's going to play another song while we get everybody set up. So anybody that wants to get a question here, we'll have somebody here kind of direct a line, or they'll carry a microphone around. But anybody that wants to ask a question, now is the time to think about it. And in the meantime, as we get all of that organized, Jordan is going to perform another song. You can come on up here, Jordan, after you get everything tuned there with the Ron Paul guitar. By the way, have you been playing that same guitar for 20 years or so?
I got this guitar in 2010 as an endorsement from Takumi. And
Yeah, go ahead.
So Ron Paul, I don't know if you guys remember the first big debate of the 2012 campaign, Ron Paul got about 90 seconds of actual speaking time out of like a 3-hour debate. They gave him 90 seconds. And I was here in South Carolina for that debate. And after the debate, he came to our event afterwards. He blew off all the pundits because he had no use for any of them. And I had a Ron Paul bumper sticker, and I had written a campaign song for him, and I debuted it at that event. It was like, 2,000-3,000 people. And I put the sticker on right before I played the song, and he was, standing right there. It was just like a really cool moment. So I've just never taken it off. Just never.
It looks like it. It looks like it's seen quite a
Yeah.
few political campaigns now.
It has. I've been all over the place.
Well, Jordan, what do you have for us next?
So I think I have like the perfect song to kind of segue from this amazing conversation. I've supported a lot of political candidates besides Ron Paul, and just sitting here, I met Mark in August down in Texas, actually celebrating Ron Paul's 90th birthday. I met his wife and Evan. I saw my friend Evan, who's one of his political advisor, and I got to meet Mark over Zoom, and we had a long conversation because I always research candidates before I support them. And I was just so struck by his positions and his conviction and his faith, and he just checked all the boxes. Just all the boxes for me. Like to put my name and my music next to him is a no-brainer, the same way it was with Ron Paul. But sitting here today, listening to this conversation with you two gentlemen was really inspiring, and I'm like more gung-ho than ever. So any music that you need for your campaign, you got it. I got your back. So I wrote this song back in 2011 when I was traveling around the country, and I had I have 7 children. I have 5 boys and 2 girls, but my oldest 2 boys were only 3 and 2.5 at the time. And I realized that, I'm playing in a world that is dangerous. Speaking truth to power can get you into some sticky situations and get people that you don't want looking at you very hard. And so I had this reality check about that, and I wrote this song for my boys as basically a letter to them about what I wanted them to do if I wasn't around anymore. So it's for my kids and for yours or your future kids. Andrew, can you bring my guitar up a little bit? What's that? Oh, okay. That's good enough. That's good. Thanks. This is called The Message of Freedom. Sons, as I write you this letter of days past and days yet to come, and the message of freedom, the message of freedom. I stand at the edge of the pages of history and lessons unlearned. It feels like these pages are remaining unturned, but boys, it's no mystery. Children, I'm sorry to leave you this world in a state of disaster. It was given to me in a similar state, and I woke up so late in the game. Now it's spiraling faster. Is freedom's the answer? What's the question? Resist the advances of force and aggression. Leave to your children the promise of something more. As God is my witness, I'll be a slave no more. Boys, listen close, for our souls may depend on the actions we take and the causes we choose to defend. So treat every man as a friend and live your own lives with their divine processions and transform your world with your selfless expressions. Reach out your hands, in time you'll understand. Children, one day I'll be gone, and you'll have to remember these words and be strong as you cling to each other, your family, your faith, and your father's song. You've known this all along. This freedom's the answer. What's the question? Resist the advances of force and aggression, and leave to your children the promise of something more. As God is my witness, I'll be a slave no more. Oh, the message of freedom endured every tyrant or second-rate despot the world's ever known, and for one simple reason, the people have kept it alive. Oh, and with no end in sight, to the level of violence that men in high places will sink for to silence the will of the people. In you, it must survive. 'Cause freedom's the answer. What's the question? Resist the advances of force and aggression, and leave to your children the promise of something more. As God is my witness, I'll be a slave no more. Oh, freedom's the answer. What's the question? Resist the advances of force and aggression, and leave to your children the promise of something more. As God is my witness, I'll be afraid no more. This life so dear, oh peace so sweet, to be purchased with chains from our necks to our feet. Forbid this, Lord, I know not what is left. Just give me liberty, or give me death.
Jordan Page, great job. Father of 7 and 1 Ron Paul themed guitar. Hey, where can people follow your music if they want to hear more, or if there's any other people that want to hire you for a political event? Where can they find you?
Sure, you can find me through jordanpage.net, JORDANPAGE. I'm real easy to find. You can look Jordan Page music anywhere, and you'll find me on all the streaming sites. And yeah, I'm easy to find. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate you coming here today. All right, anybody that has a question for Mark, you can step up to the microphone we have right here, front and center. Now is the time. Or if you got a question for me too, I suppose I can field a couple questions, I guess, too. But this is your next senator. So if you have anything you want to say, now's the time. Before he gets in there, he's going to be a little harder to reach. So now's the time. First question, just let us know your name and go ahead and fire away.
Well, for security reasons, I go.
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah,
you can go with a gnome de plume.
Yeah. I go by Black Rant. You can find me online as well. Probably not as easily as Jordan, but this has been a great event. Thank you, Owen. Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Before I ask the question, I just wanted to say I agree with everything that you say about putting God first. I was in the hospital last week for the first time in years because of a chronic condition, but my mother prayed over me when I was born. She put her hands on me, she prayed on me, and that chronic illness is nowhere near as bad as it could have been. And I think it's because of the grace of God. But that being said, my number one concern, I have a lot of questions that I could ask you, but my number one concern in South Carolina is I look around the world, I see the UK, I see totalitarianism, the curtain, the iron curtain that they talked about, the digital curtain is falling on Europe. I went to China personally 10 years ago, and I saw people were whispering to me, do you know about Bible? Do you know about Jesus? You know, they had to whisper it because religion is a crime there, other than the state, other than worshiping Mao, other than worshiping whoever's in power. We see digital ID encroaching. We see the mark of the beast, if you want to call it that in a religious context. We see this digital gulag being built around us as we speak. I think it's actually a good thing that states have control over their legislation for AI. But, and this is not necessarily a political question that you necessarily have to answer. Maybe Owen, you can answer it. Maybe Mark, you could, I don't know. Doesn't matter. I just want to put it out there. That's something I'm concerned with. What are we going to do? Because now everything's online now. 10 years ago, it was like, you know, a conspiracy theory. 15 years ago, nobody, oh, come on. I got cash in my pocket right now. How do we stop ourselves from winding up in the ditch because we said the wrong thing, because we're not saying the politically correct thing of the week? That's my question. Thank you.
That's a great one.
Yeah, it's a question that's ahead of its time, I would say, but that might be something you're face to face with. That might be something that it's time when you get in.
Well, we're faced with it in Greenville, where I was born and raised. I've lived in the state my whole life. And we were the first to agree we want to be a smart city. So it's like Solomon brought up.
Black Rant, follow him on social media.
Yeah. So he's got a great question, because in China, they have social scores and they control their people with that. And they're listening to everything they say. And they start shutting down their ability to buy and sell and have food and other things with all this digital pressure to control their people. Do y'all want that? I don't. I don't want to give somebody over the phone my social security number. They don't have any right to that. It's an invasion constitutionally of our amendments that protect our privacy and our Bill of Rights. And so, and I'm not a fan of AI. I think it's good for certain things if it has major controls over it, but we're going to lose the ability to think and reason and make decisions. And, you know, students can use that to write a paper instead of using their own brain power, and we're dumbing our citizens down. But we don't need to be controlled by government. And that's moving into socialist, communist control right here in America, because they're here and they're in our Congress. And again, we've got to get those bad people out. And that's a no-brainer for me. Absolutely not do we need any digital scoring and social scoring to control the people, because that's what it all is. It's leading to a new world order, and we've got to get out of the United Nations. We don't need to be a part of that. We don't need to have the Federal Reserve, all those agencies that are unconstitutional, that are telling us how to run things. And I'm not really for all this crazy digital currency that we have. I believe we need to get back to gold and silver and bring that back. That's God's method of economy. But the social scoring, all the digital ID stuff has gone way, way too far. We're losing our privacy every second. All these cameras you see, they're putting up everywhere, all over the streets. They'll tell you, no, this is for your security, for your protection. But an evil government that we currently have instilled with the wrong people that are enemies of our country. Again, get off the word rhino, start using the word enemy. Anybody that's doing anything against your freedom is an enemy of America. Face it. We need to call it what it is, and we need to say no to that and stop this and write. I mean, it's horrible. You know, Lindsey Graham, if he gets 200,000 emails, maybe he would get a signal. Can we get that much? We should be able to in this state of South Carolina, get that kind of push back against evil stuff and tell him to vote the correct way. And it's horrible that we have to make our employees do their jobs. But no, we don't need any of that.
So just to reemphasize here, you think we should be out of the United Nations?
Absolutely.
And how do we feel about that? All right.
Yeah. We have our own sovereignty here. We can run our own country. I don't need a majority of Islamic terrorists with 57%. I think they have in the United Nations telling us you don't need guns anymore because we're going to have a world order and we're going to decide what your laws are. No,
All right.
You're not. Not while I'm still here.
And they tried to do that with the whole attempt at the global government with COVID. All right, I'm going to put you on the spot with this one. This one might get you in trouble. What about NATO?
No. We need to run our own thing and decide our own military, America first principles in everything we do. And, that's how that is for me. It's pretty simple.
I like that. So is that a campaign platform? Out of
Absolutely.
NATO, out of the UN?
Yep. In the Federal Reserve, in income taxes, get rid of the VA. We have a promise to not leave anybody behind in combat, but we're leaving our veterans behind when they get home. And the VA is a third world, third tier, lower, horrible medical offering for our veterans that were willing to lay their lives down and sacrifice everything. They need a card to go anywhere they want to do and get the best possible medical care that they need. And we've got to focus on this and transition them back into normal civilian life because the suicides are going through the roof. And it's just horrible. And, how would you feel if you were in Afghanistan and fought, and then you see Joe Biden evacuate us with ISIS, and then we're sending $8 billion to Iran and all the crazy stuff we do? That's betrayal of your own military, right? It'd be like me and our company paying our guys commission, but having a website that sells direct to the consumer cheaper than my salespeople can sell it for. I'm betraying my employees. We're being betrayed. We have traitors, and we've got to deal with it.
That's good policy, and I doubt Lindsey Graham would be able to take such a principled stand on those issues. He'd probably be up here fumbling around, like at the knees knocking again.
Yeah.
And
he's having to make a decision that he'll lose another $1 million a year in funding.
Yeah. And the one foreign policy thing I mentioned earlier, and we'll get ready for the next question here. In my opinion, the biggest foreign policy disaster in recent years, maybe you could debate about some other things we've done recently in the Middle East, but to me, without a doubt, the foreign policy on Ukraine has been a complete disaster. It's cost us hundreds of billions of dollars. There's been no semblance of victory to even think of. The sanctions against Russia have been a massive failure. We've pushed BRICS into this defensive position against the US dollar. It's been a complete disaster. And Lindsey Graham just continues to do it. I mean, it's just like you have a baseball player or something up there, and all he does is hit fastballs for home runs. And Lindsey just keeps throwing fastballs. It's like eventually you're going to have to change something because it's not working, but he has no problems coming out and continue. More money for Ukraine, more war against Russia. The people can't take it. They can't take it anymore.
The only thing I saw any accountability recently was Donald Trump sent Patriot missile systems to the Ukraine. Those are defensive missiles that we used in the Gulf War. And they sent a barrage of missiles out to prevent a rocket from hitting their troops from the enemy.
Which is like the last ditch stand because they think Russia's about to go into Kiev.
But at least there's accountability instead of sending them cash and trusting that they did the right thing with it. We've seen videos of the Ukraine government dragging husbands and fathers out of their homes to go get them killed on the front lines because all the money we've sent them didn't buy any more military equipment. They're not getting better. They're not winning. There's just people getting rich off of the money that we're all paying that we don't have. We can't write a check, but we're writing checks as a bankrupt nation to give foreign aid that's unconstitutional, that has no accountability, and there's people just cashing in off of it. I'm tired of that. Aren't y'all? Yep. We need to know what's happening to our money, and we don't have the money right now. There's no checks coming. We got to take care of our own at home first. That's America first.
Yeah, and for those listening right now, take that clip and any other of the fine clips tonight from Mark. Take that clip and spread it far and wide, because this is how we're going to defeat Lindsey Graham. If they don't know that there is a great candidate running against Lindsey, then they're not going to know to get out and vote. Take these clips, share them far and wide, make them go viral. Let's get the Lindsey Graham knee knocking so loud that we can hear it all the way from Ukraine. All right, let's do that. Okay. All right, let's take another question here.
And maybe he'll stay over there since he loves.
I'm okay
Zelensky.
with that. I'm okay.
Yep.
Hey, Owen, my name's Michael. First of all, welcome to South Carolina. We appreciate everything that you're doing, and especially being here in Columbia, South Carolina today. Mark, again, thank you for running. My question is about term limits. I think that's a big issue on our federal side and the state side. It's interesting that we can have term limits for our president and our governor, but we can't have term limits for our congressmen or our state legislators. How do we get term limits on the state and the federal side?
Well, the people want it. And if we work for the people, that's a common sense answer. Yes, I'm for term limits. Lindsey Graham, when he first ran on term limits over 30 years ago.
He's still running.
He lied. Oops. And yeah, it's crazy. We've got to have that. There's time for fresh turnover that's needed. And again, I'll add a merit clause. I would like to add that just because you have 6 years as a U.S. Senator or 2 years as a House Representative or 4 years as a president, if you show signs of treasonous activity and things like that, then you'll be removed immediately. And we'll have a special election to get a traitor out of our government.
Yeah. And I think it was Joe Rogan that suggested if we ever have the technical results that would be classified as a recession, just GDP numbers and such, that if that ever happened, you immediately re-vote. Everybody in Congress is back up for re-election whenever that happens. And I think it's actually fairly reasonable, because you as a businessman would understand that it's policy that has done this. When our politicians decided to raise the corporate tax rate and to make all these regulations impossible to hop through, they gave everything to China. They gave everything to Asia. They gave everything to Central America. We didn't have to do that. We didn't have to force all of our manufacturing and production overseas. We didn't have to do that. It was policy that did that. And it was the foreign interest that made them do it. And maybe the special interests too, that get the cheap labor that we talk about. So these things are a result of policy, which is why I do believe that they are reversible. We just have to get people in there that are willing to do it.
Right. We need to make decisions based on common sense, like Trump is talking about, godly values, and make decisions and do it. We don't need to continue dragging it out, and it's just ridiculous. I wouldn't do that. We'll close the store and fix something like this. We don't keep dragging around with it, wasting time.
And on that note, dragging it out and wasting time, you know what? Let me just make a proposal here for Lindsey Graham. Just end it. Just end it right now. Just drop out of the race. You had a nice run. You've been in there for decades. You've sucked.
There you go.
Just drop out.
Leave with a good star in your cap and do the right thing.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I don't know. I can't promise South Carolina will forgive the transgressions, but we won't be as mean to you. How about that? We'll be a little nicer if he just drops out of the race.
There you go.
That would be the right thing to do if Lindsey Graham was an American patriot running on term limits. And here he is, 30 years later?
Over 30.
Jeez, unbelievable. All right, let's take another question. Go ahead, sir.
Name is Ken. Mr. Lynch, it's nice to meet you in person. Thanks for having us. Owen, thanks for putting this on. I'm a longtime fan, longtime listener to your show. So anyway, my questions are more so about the local level. Primary-wise, we've noticed in South Carolina with the open primaries, a lot of the reasons the Democrats, Lindsey Graham keeps getting elected as the Democrats jumping in and voting in our primary and voting for him in ours. And I'm wondering if there's any way of correcting that before November 2026. That's one question. And then the other was, I've noticed in past primaries, particularly in 2014, I voted for Lee Bright. You might know him. Yep. Okay. So I met him one time at an event sort of like this, but yeah, so I voted for him, 2014, and there was like 10 others on the ballot. And it seemed like nobody could all get together and just pick one. I voted for Lee Bright, but some of my buddies, I remember meeting with them later on that afternoon at happy hour, having some beers. And they're like, well, I voted for that guy. I voted for this guy. And just like a group of 10 of us, we couldn't just decide on like one, just one to pick to go up against Lindsey. And I guess another question I had was, what do you think of Drew McKissick, head of our RNC here in South Carolina? Do you think highly of him, or do you think we could be doing better?
No, he's a traitor. He allowed Pickens to be unseated at the last convention because he knew Lee Bright ran for that.
I remember
position.
that. Yep.
And it was horrible. And I've seen it the last 2 conventions I've gone to, just all the shenanigans he pulls. And he's arrogant and prideful, and he's a narcissist. And, we ran Lynn Wood against him back in 2020, and he wouldn't give Lynn the list. And it was just horrible what he did to him, and shut the convention down and had it by Zoom and cheated the whole thing. And we caught him cheating in Greenville. We reversed it.
And by the way, they're doing the same thing to you now, trying to overload the ticket
right
to water down that alternate vote.
Drew McKissick is with Lindsey Graham, and Lindsey Graham's co-chairman are Henry McMaster, the governor, and Tim Scott. And a lot of these people are part of the United States Globalist Coalition, a godless, evil organization that hates America, hates God, that's destroying our country. They come through Liberty Fellowship and Aspen Institute. And y'all need to all check into that and find out who these people are, and you'll see what they're all connected to. And it's the destruction of this country. They're all for LGBTQ, DEI, all the crazy stuff we're fighting to stop. They're for it, and they're using their power in an abusive way. And we're just taking it. We've got to speak up against these people and get them out of office. And they're doing everything they can to maintain their control of their power. And the biggest obstacle I have is the Republican Party, because they're part of the Uniparty, which is part of the left, which is an enemy of our country. That's a godless organization. And it's not the Democrat Party anymore. It's run by Islamic terrorists and communists and evil at the highest level. And so is the Republican Party too. I have people blocking me from speaking. They won't let me come to GOP events. They've stopped events we've had at churches. I've called the pastors back and said, I'm Mark Lynch. I want to talk to you. And I had a pastor apologize. He said, I hope you'll forgive me. I should have listened to you first. I took the word of the GOP chairman in our area, and he made up lies about you. After we were on the phone for 3 minutes, he said, Mark, I can tell who you are. You're coming to my church. And he let us hold a Charlie Kirk prayer vigil there. And we have a campaign presentation stop there after that. And he brought other pastors to meet me and said, Mark's the real deal. These guys are lying to us.
You know what's amazing? Because I've experienced the same thing. Whenever you make that first effort, in a serious effort, a good faith effort to get involved in politics, actually have America First policy or anti-establishment policy, however you want to put it, it always seems that the first blockade is the Republicans. It always seems like the first obstacle is the GOP. And it's tough unless your name is Donald Trump or you can fund your own campaign. It's tough. It's tough to break through that barrier. It's tough to hurdle that wall. We deal with the same thing in Texas. I know that it happens across the country. Your final question was about the open primaries. We have limited time, so if you could just have the next person come up there. But yeah, if you want to comment on that.
We've got a real bill that Rob Harris put out to close the primaries. Then we got a fake bill that Drew McKissick put out about 4 or 5, 6 months ago to sound like he was for closing the primaries. When he read the detail of it, it was a complete lie. And so we've got to understand what this is. And I mean, if this isn't the most common sense thing ever, we're allowing Democrats to come in on our primary election to determine the outcome of our elections, and they affect the results. And that's just crazy. It's crazy that we have open primaries in this state. But it's hard to get it passed because most of our people in Columbia If you look at the Freedom Index, and we have copies of it here, we can show you, where we take the whole last year of 2024 and show you the scorecard of every legislator in Columbia, Congress, the House of Representatives, the senators in the state house, and their voting record according to the Constitution. And most of our Republican elected officials are voting worse than the Democrats. It's just like your kids. Yeah, hey, how you doing in your math class? How'd you do? Oh, I aced it. I'm gonna head on and go get on my bike and go play. Well, hang on a second. The mail came today and we have your report card. You're not going anywhere, right? So we have to keep our officials accountable, and we have to know how they're performing. Just like our employees, we review them. And if they're falling out a little bit, we catch them before they get too far out. We don't never not look at what they're doing, but we're allowing that to happen to us, and we've got to get involved and know and educate ourselves and be informed.
And you know what I've noticed too is these swamp creatures love to be able to look around and not have anybody pushing the boundaries, because it's almost like they're graded on a curve, right?
Right.
So if they all come in with a Liberty score of 50%, then they can kind of look around and be like, yeah, I'm as good as you get around here. But if Mark Lynch gets in and he has a Liberty score of 90%, all of a sudden everybody else is going to realize, I better get these scores up. Otherwise, people are going to realize that I actually have an F. But when everybody gets an F, it looks like a C. So that's another reason why we got to get you in.
It's all about proper execution of trying to make something change, like we did with the forensic doctor, psychiatrist Edward Summer. We had to spend money, activate people, find out who the 6 senators were on the committee, mail a direct mail piece to all the voters in that senator's area that were for him, and we timed it. He got it on a Friday, so he couldn't react, and he got blowback from all of his voters. And then we went and took 100 people to Columbia twice and sent another tactical timed direct mail piece out to their neighborhood, and we stopped it. And it took a whole day to be willing to drive from Greenville to Columbia and spend the day here and go up there and raise Cain in their face and make them answer questions. We had women activists that were sick of it. They were following the state senators into the men's restroom, said, I asked you a question and I want an answer. And they couldn't believe it. They didn't like that day. We went to every office of all 46 of them in the Gressett building. And that's what it took. That's the kind of evil we're fighting.
You know what? I'll make a prediction. That day is coming for Lindsey Graham.
Yep.
That day's coming for Lindsey Graham.
Amen.
And he can hide on all these foreign countries and run around. You're running around the state of South Carolina getting work done. He's running around the world in foreign countries trying to get work done. Maybe that's because he's hiding, because he knows the next time he shows his face, somebody might chase him into the women's room or whatever room he uses. Somebody might chase him in there and ask him some questions.
Well, we're done with Lindsey.
Lindsey, we don't want to see it, man. All right. Go ahead, sir.
All right. This is Michael. Congrats on the show, Owen, and thank you both for putting it on. So a couple of things. I appreciate the candor. I being able to say it like it is, using the word traitor. Not a lot of people are using that word these days who are actually running for power positions. I like what I hear about the UN, your position on UN, NATO, digital surveillance, sound money, and the Federal Reserve. I think those are huge for the masses, basically. Are you willing to look at other things like property taxes and sort of outside of what are some of the most outside of the box platforms or positions you might consider for at average citizens? And because you can, one of the questions that Owen asked earlier about what's sort of your vision of the potential of America, and I know that people like Trump are really good salesmen saying it's going to be the best and the best. How about we start with home affordability, hiring Americans, putting America first, basically. I think that's a good starting point. What policy positions are you looking at that are maybe outside the box that a lot of others are considering? Oh, and then one more thing on the surveillance thing, the whole thing about surveillance and AI. I would put forward probably that's been in place for a lot longer than a lot of us would like to admit. There's the 5 eyes, 7 eyes, 20 eyes or whatever. There's the geofencing happening on Christians on the West Coast right now. Would you be willing to fight against the Real ID Act? Because that's sort of a stepping stone there. I want to be able to, it's a state's right to have a government issued ID from the states and travel between the states in our own country. Why do we need a federal ID?
Right. Awesome. You get it. A lot of this is part of Agenda 2030 that's coming in. We've been watching it. It's all a communist, Marxist, Chinese thing that we're following because we have those people here in our country driving those policies. So again, all the digital ID stuff, the Real ID 2, all that's crazy that we've allowed it, and we need to fight back and say no to it and end it. It's unconstitutional. It violates our Bill of Rights and everything in the Constitution. It's pretty simple. Things like that, and it's a shame, but maybe we create a Senate subcommittee that looks at a new bill when it comes to the desk for a vote, or for wording legal terms, and to create a bill. If it has any language like that in it, that's a no. It's nullified at that first filter. It doesn't even need any more attention. Get that out of here. That's not an America First thing. That's horrible for our citizens. It's not America First. Big companies and inflation and everything, again, when we do a presentation, we show the enumerated powers of the Constitution. Then we show the hierarchy of the government, how the executive and legislative and judiciary branches are set up and who falls under them and how this country operates. And then we bring in and we mark it all up and show all the unconstitutional agencies below that we've created that are outside of our enumerated powers. Again, we are in an inflationary economy. We're printing money that we don't have. It's not based on anything. It's all digital fiat. It's just money that's based on faith. We believe it means something. It has a value, but it doesn't. Gold takes blood and sweat and tears to get to it, to bring it out of the dirt and create it. And all we have is what's above the soil. That's God's method of economy, not this digital currency that we wake up to like we did in 2006 or whatever, when the Federal Reserve bankrupted everything and took a skim, and GMC and everybody were getting bailouts, and we're all paying for that. And it was just, they took a payoff. We woke up, there was $300 billion stolen from us. So we've got to end that. The other thing about inflation, and one of the Clemson students brought this up about BlackRock and all these companies that are controlling everything and becoming a monopoly, and they're price fixing. And this is happening in our industry, in the appliance and furniture industry. The manufacturers are telling us what we have to sell something for. The capitalistic competitive market's gone. And if a manufacturer needs to move more boxes, and this came from our Korean manufacturers in the appliance industry, LG and Samsung. They had phones, they had name recognition, they had TVs, and then they came into the appliance industry, and they'll take a refrigerator that we sell for $29.99, and on Labor Day they drop it $1,000. We don't have that kind of margin in appliances. It's about a 20 to 23% margin of profit that we have. There's not $1,000 we've ever made on a refrigerator that sells for $29.99. But they make us sell it for that, and then they lower our cost just a little bit, and our margin gets squeezed, and we're being controlled by the manufacturer. So some of these brands, we stand up to them, we have to say no. And then we're dealing with fear in the buying group with 3,000 members, trying to direct them to all do the same thing. But we've got to unify on these things and stand up to it, because we're being told how inflation works and all that, and it's just horrible. And so we've got to bust up these organizations when they become a monopoly, and deal with that at the federal level and tell them you can't do it. We've got to have competition, because you're price fixing. That's illegal.
And wouldn't it be nice to be able to manufacture this stuff right here in the United States of America, like we used to?
Yep. Well, in our industry, Whirlpool's the last American manufacturer. GE's owned by Haier, a Chinese organization. Electrolux that produces Frigidaire is Swedish. And then you have the Korean manufacturers, LG and Samsung, coming in. And they did that in cars with Kia and Hyundai and all these things. And it's horrible. And NAFTA created all that with Bill
That's right.
Clinton. You know,
Policy.
we need a world economy. No, that's not America first. Right. And the quality of our products, you know, when I was a kid, made in China on the little toy, or made in Mexico or made in Japan meant something. It meant plastic junk. Made in America was built to last, and we took pride in our manufacturing, and it employed Americans and kept our money here inside this country. Just like in the appliance industry, I hope people in Greenville and within a 75-mile radius will do business with us, because we employ 110 people. We collect a lot of sales taxes and all this stuff, and it's about our local roads, our schools. The money needs to stay in South Carolina. The internet was the wild, wild west, and we had to fight that. We had the Main Street Fairness Act lobbyist group in our buying group going to D.C. fighting for that, because people would look at our store, get education from our top salespeople that had been there 25 years, and they go home and order it online and not pay any sales tax. And that's a lot of money. You know, we did all the work, except we just didn't get the sale, and the money left South Carolina and went to Washington State or New York or something. And it took years fighting that with everything we had to get that corralled and stopped, you know. But it's all about doing what it takes to stop evil.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's nice that you decided to come back after everything you endured for the last time.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch, for being here tonight. My name is Elizabeth. I sit on a local school board here in the Midlands. And I have kind of a two-part question for you. And I was wondering, first of all, what are your thoughts on the school boards becoming a partisan position? I ran for school board back in 2020 during the COVID situation. And kind of like you were saying, it was simply because I did not understand how these things were happening in our schools, and nobody was standing up and speaking out about it. I had a first grader that was learning how to write his ABCs on a laptop using a mouse and a keyboard. And out of 17,000 students in our district, I didn't see anybody else standing up to run. So now I'm in a kind of 3-person conservative minority of a board. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the partisan potentially race of school board members, and also your thoughts on having superintendents of education in various districts being an elected position.
Can we be partisan? You know?
I agree. But my thought process is a lot of times people get voted into office, and it shouldn't be one, especially to get in our schools. That should not be something that is a partisan type of elected position. But at the same time, we've kind of seen what's happened since COVID, especially. And we seem to kind of be going in that direction. So I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are.
I'm just about a godly position with prayer back in schools. I mean, we need to remind people of the definition of America. We speak English here. We love God, the one true God. We're one nation under God. You can believe ever how you want to, but we have certain definitions of what we stand on, and we're going to teach the truth in schools and our true history, and we're going to bring prayer back in schools, and we're not going to let porn be taught in the school books, in the 3rd grade books that our school board in Greenville found out about. And if you're for all that, it doesn't really matter what party you're for, but you can't be involved in raising our kids and dictating to them and brainwashing them into evil. It's got to get out of the schools. So, because Democrat, Republican working together, I can't work with the enemy. I'm not going to sit down at the table of the enemy and work with them, you know.
Yes, sir, I agree. My second question is, as far as fiscal responsibility, a lot of people kind of skip over school boards when it comes to that. And there's been multiple stories across the country of fiscal irresponsibility within school districts. What are your thoughts and plans when it comes to making sure that school districts are financially held accountable?
Well, I don't know if you'll like this answer. I'm for homeschooling at this point. The public school system's broken, and we need to take a break. And if we all pull out, just like in our buying group, when we can get all of the dealers to say no to a manufacturer and the purchase orders stop, then they're willing to listen, you know. And we've got a big movement in the country about homeschooling. I'm so proud of it. And we have our TD Center, big convention center in Greenville. There's curriculums approved, Christian teaching, godly moral values, again, about America first principles and teaching the heritage of this great nation. And that's what my grandchildren are going to have. My daughter and our daughter-in-law both agreed we're homeschooling. They've seen what's going on. And so I'm for that. I don't know that we can save how bad it is in public schools, and we need to all walk away from it and let them see we're tired of it. Unified together, making a decision that's best for our children, you know. So that's what I'm for. Thank you.
All right. She's got her phone out. She's ready to go.
I'm not here to throw hands. I am a cybersecurity professional, and I'd be interested to hear your take first on Governor McMaster's South Carolina Critical Infrastructure for Cybersecurity Initiative. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or
I haven't read his initiative. I would study it really well because, you know, during COVID, when he locked us down 33 consecutive 15 weeks in a row, he should have been arrested. And then he came out when he ran again and talked about how great he led at South Carolina through COVID. And he's the co-chairman of Lindsey Graham's campaign. And if all I know as a voter that Lindsey's stance is for killing babies up to 15 weeks and in 9 states signing a bill that puts our taxpayer, puts us in bondage to evil in a blood pact to kill children in 9 states up to the moment before birth. And he signed on to that man's campaign. So I haven't read any of that. I haven't heard about it, but and he's allowing the selling of our land to China as the governor of our state. I don't know that I would trust any new thing he's come out with. I'm glad he's termed out. Term limits are good.
Understood. The reason I was asking is because I know that it's a part of, it covers cyber protection for the 15 critical infrastructures in the state of South Carolina, so that if the federal government were completely shut down, we would be able to get back up and running and be entirely independent of the federal government in the event of a nationwide cyber attack. So that was why I was curious about that.
It's interesting. I'll look at it. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
No worries. And then my last thing was, I'd also like to hear your take overall just on your stance on technology, what you would like to do with it for the state of South Carolina and in the Senate. I know there's a bill right now that they're working to pass. It's HR 2384, the Financial Technology Protection Act. It would establish a working group to combat terrorism and illicit financing using those technologies. So just wanted to hear overall, like, your take on technology, what you'd like to do for the state of South Carolina in terms of education for students in cyber, and on getting our tech manufacturing back in the United States, because we are far too dependent overseas on getting our software, our chips, everything like that. So mostly an overall general curiosity on your stances on those things.
Yeah, all that's awesome. We need to be manufacturing our own chips here. We saw that in the appliance industry during COVID. Everything has computer technology and modules in it today, and we don't make anything. We need to bring all that back here and take that over and manufacture everything we can back in this country. That's one thing. Cybersecurity, that's a big issue, and we need to develop that. And if we're controlling it, we're manufacturing our own chips and have our engineers in the computer world designing this, we'll be able to know that we're actually protecting our computer systems because we built them, right? And we need to own all those tiers of manufacturing so that we create good security that we own. We can't work with China anymore. You know, we need to get all that back and get it here. And I'm for bringing American manufacturing back and employing Americans and keeping the money in this country and not being beholden or leveraged with enemies of our nation manufacturing everything that they do. You know, the vision in our country, I've seen what's happened with electric cars. I know Elon Musk is a smart guy and all that stuff, but I'm against that. When you study what one battery takes to manufacture that and all the pollution that causes, that's against everything electric car manufacturing talks about. So it's about knowing the whole process. And it's not working, and car dealers are finding out they're not selling. And we already have gasoline and diesel working. We need to just stay there and work on other things. And we got to get our food manufacturing back too, and our farmland in the country, and reward farmers and quit paying them, the evil organizations that are paying our farmers to dump their milk out, burn their fields, sell their cattle. You know, I hope RFK gets moving because he's promised a lot, and it's time to start seeing some outcome from his statements of what he said he would do for us with our health care and situation, because I'm tired of eating food that has a paragraph 20 sentences long about all the man-made government dyes and everything in it. We're creating cancer and everything in our country. We've got to make America healthy again. And it's, you know, if you're going to do that, and if you're in charge of it, it's time to start seeing results. I'm about executing policy and getting across the finish line. A lot of times in business and in life, we talk about stuff over and over and over. We never go take the first step to score and get the touchdown. We've got to score and start finishing what we're talking about. So yes, we've got a lot of work to do in America. Thank you.
All right.
Those are good questions.
All right, we'll squeeze one more in here. Final question.
Want to say thank you first for coming out. I agree we should dump Lindsey. He's been in there way too long, so I'm glad you agree with the term limits. I had a question on whether or not you agree with the death penalty. As a pro-life Christian man, I know one of our gubernatorial candidates, Nancy Mace, thinks that we need stricter punishments for crime in our state. And, you know, being that you are pro-life, what are your thoughts on death penalty?
So
It's a nice softball to close it out for you.
yeah, like it. No, that's some of the biggest questions we have in a lot of our pro-life candidates in the state house, in the Freedom Caucus, that are endorsed by Equal Protection South Carolina, like I am, had that as a hit piece that came out against them that said the Freedom Caucus members were for serving our mothers the death penalty in our state. You know, I've researched the death penalty in South Carolina. There's only been 12 executions in our state since 2000 in 25 years. You have to ask yourself, is the baby formed at conception or not? I believe it is. And you can look on YouTube, and they have a video now that shows a beam of light happens when sperm fertilizes the egg and a new life is created. It's not okay to murder that child at any stage in the womb. And so are we gonna, do we believe our judiciary systems in the state or in the country are going to start executing women for an abortion or murdering their child in the womb? I don't believe they will. And but it is murder. And then what we're trying to do is promote life, not death. We've got to stop the murder of 60 million people and growing in our country. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the death side. And before, how many mothers were executed before Roe v. Wade? I don't know of one. But it was against the law. And so that's what we're going to go back to. And I'm going to fight as hard as I can. That's my biggest priority, is to stop the murder of our children. That's my number one platform. Until we do that, God's hands and his blessings off our country. He's a just God, and we can't murder our own, or I can't swear to an oath of office as a U.S. senator and be okay with abortion still. I can't. I'm not. Thank you.
All right. Well, first of all, I do need, I have something over here. If you guys would, yes, that would be great. Thank you very much. we want to thank the University of South Carolina for having us. We want to thank everybody for showing up here. We want to thank the Palmetto Party for making this happen. We want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight as well. Yes, thank you. And this is my final message. It's time for America, specifically South Carolina. It's time for you to dump Lindsey Graham. Okay? Now, if you had a wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, significant other, and they kept cheating on you and lying to you and selling you out, you would dump them. So it's time to dump Lindsey Graham. That's a very important step to making America great again, is getting this swamp rat out of Washington, D.C. Now, that's my final words as I put on my official dump Lindsey cap here. But Mark, why don't you tell people the best websites to follow your campaign, how they can support your campaign, and what you're up to next?
Yeah, go to lynch4senate.com. We have a link tree available that'll take you to our X page, Facebook page, everywhere we are on digital and social media. How do we win this? Believe, fight. I need you to hit your knees in prayer and pray for this campaign, because it's spiritual warfare. America has spoken, and South Carolina has spoken. They're tired of lawyers. They're tired of career politicians. They want a businessman. They want a God-fearing patriot that won't compromise, that'll hold the line, that has integrity and courage and will do what he says, and that's me. And so pray for us. If you want to donate money, we need money. I seeded $5 million. We need more. $5 million is going to barely get the basic stuff we have to do. We're running some heavy TV commercials right now. We bought the signs that it takes for a statewide race was $35,000 to buy the signs that we brought tonight for you to stick in your yards and put them out so people can hear about us. The best thing you can do is have a meet and greet and bring everybody in your community, and they're in your phone. Call your friends and your neighbors and the people you do carpool with or church with, and tell them, I met this guy and I believe in him. If you do, if you don't, you won't. I'm talking to the people that do believe I'm the right choice. You'll call your friends and neighbors and help us. Word of mouth is the best testimony. And show up and remember to tell everybody the primary is June 9th. A lot of people forget that. They think about November. And the candidate that we need, the one true candidate that's going to weed himself out to go to the general, you got to come get me in on the primary. June 9th is the date. Write it down and stay committed to it. It's not too late, y'all. We've got a lot of work to do. I will be a big influence with other senators when we're in the restroom or out in the hall or at the lunch break. And I know how to keep, just like in our appliance world, when we have 3,000 members and I speak to them and I push a little more and I'm willing to say the hard things, and it might cost me a vote or cost me a friendship for a little while, but people will come back and they love that I am what I am. You see who I am, and this is what you get with me. And I just tell the truth like Donald Trump, and it might offend somebody, but being offended's an option, And I'm not going to hold back on what I say, being worried about offending you. And I saw a guy like that when he brought that up, and we talked about that. He became one of my greatest endorsements because I didn't fold when I had the tough pro-life question. We've got to end abortion, and we've got to do it. And we got to help these women understand it's all about life. That's what this country is all about: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I'll say this too, then I'll end on this. I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, I like what you say and I like your platform and all that, but I just don't like, saying dump Lindsey. And one lady, I said, ma'am, I'm sorry. That's as nice as I can say it when somebody's betraying this country, stabbing us all in the back. He needs to be arrested for treason. He's signed up to kill babies in the womb, and he's getting rich doing all this stuff. And that's as nice as I can say it. Are you kidding me? It's time to get real and get rid of these traitors. Will y'all help me do it? Thank you.
Well said. Couldn't have said it better myself. Dumping Lindsey would be the nicest thing that we could do for him. And, we'll let people read in between the lines.
You know what God says? I am holy, so be holy. And a pastor friend of mine from Africa told me this. He said, Holiness is loving what God loves and hating what God hates. The path to heaven is narrow. There are people that will go to hell, and God gave his life for all of us through his son Jesus on a cross. He took the payment for our sins in full. Man, I've got it made. I've got it made. I'm going to spend eternity in heaven. But a loving heavenly Father, our Creator, will put people in hell that choose to go there. And so we have to stop being Christianese about all this stuff going on. I don't want to upset the apple cart. We got to get real and upset the apple cart and get these people out of here.
And if you're out there listening today on all the different live streams that we have, I'll ask you for one favor. Maybe you're not in South Carolina, but you're just as sick of Lindsey Graham as the people that here are. Take the clips from this show, take the clips, your favorite things that he said today, clip out 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and just spread it all over X, spread it all over social media so that we can continue to raise awareness for this campaign and let the people know there is a great candidate, not just a viable candidate, a great candidate to defeat Lindsey Graham. But we have to make the right steps to do it. Part of that relies on you at home. Part of that relies on the people here in South Carolina.
One more word. I forgot this. Here's the Constitution. It fits in my pocket. And this is twice as thick because it has the Declaration of Independence in it too. That's a common sense, simple document that our forefathers wrote from God's inspiration. I met our Chief Supreme Court Justice here in South Carolina, John Kittredge. He says, Mark, you get it. Man has always wanted to control other men and play God. He says, I make decisions like you do from the Bible, and I protect it through the Constitution in my judgeship. He said, so you get it. Here's the annotated Constitution. That's about a 25-pound book. And he says, now man is controlling man with their case law work they've done because they got off this that was your God-given unalienable rights that were protected, that God inspired our framers. And now we have laws that they're using that they wrote, and they're running things. Do y'all want to be controlled by this, by other men's ideas? Or do you want to be controlled by your framers' Constitution? That's what we'll get back to.
Amen. Well said. Mark Lynch to defeat Lindsey Graham coming up this June. Remember, if you're in South Carolina to vote. Remember, if you're listening to this and you want to get rid of Lindsey Graham, to cut these clips out, share them far and wide. That's going to do it for today's Owen Report. God bless and Godspeed.
Amen. Thank you. Awesome.